We do anything, James is going to open with a karakia for us.
Ka marama, tākiri ko te ata, korihi ko te manu, he manu kōrori, he manu kōrora. A kōrero tia mai no tua whakarere, ko te haui āhau mai, hei tō mai rangi o te ata whai. A rongo whakaidihia ki runga I paupau, ko rangi ki runga, ko papa ki raro I kāpuhutia, ko te pō, ko te whānau marama. A nau mai e te au, haere rā e te pō, tūturu o whiti whakamaua ki a tīna, haumi e whie, taiki.
Thank you, James. Dale, the floor is yours. You've got about 5 minutes. Dale, if you can just, and you can leave that one on. Thank you.
Tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou, mihi atu kia koutou I rungi te āhuatanga pauri o te wā, mō nā aisua ki te tai rāwhiti, mihi atu kia koutou. Kia ora, tātou. Just take a seat.
Kia ora, absolutely. Make yourself at home.
I was expecting my whanaunga Tina to kick this off, so I was happily going to ride in on her coattails, but I'll quickly revise where I'm at. So I'm speaking to the submission that's been put before council by, and excuse me, I'm just looking at my phone as I don't have a hard copy of that submission, but a submission that was put to this issue by the Anti-Racism Working Group. Here we go.
Dale, if you want to, we have Gordon Webb here, and if you want him to go first and we wait for Tina, you can by all means. If you want to go together with Tina, you can, because we have other people here as well, if you choose to. Oh, there she is. Good morning, Tina.
Are you ready to roll straight in, or they're offering for Gordon to go first and then we'll follow? Let's do that. Let's do that and catch our breath. My mihi on pause and see you.
So, Tina, you have just arrived. Do you want a few minutes to catch your breath? Thank you. So, Gordon, we welcome you to the table. Thank you. And then after that is Tina and then Dale. So, Gordon, about 5 minutes. I'll give you the one finger, the friendly salute when there's the 1 minute left. And then, thank you, Gordon. The floor is yours. Thank you, Gordon.
Right, well, the good news is, having handed round a set of submissions, I don't intend to read them verbatim, but I want to cover off just a couple of points on that. The first one, it seems to me that if you as councillors here don't think you're able to represent all of the community fairly, regardless of ethnicity, then you shouldn't be holding your current positions. You're here to represent everyone. All people, all races, all immigrants, anyone who is in this area, you represent them. You don't need special people to do it, I believe, unless you yourselves have an issue with that. My second point is, I don't think there is anything to suggest in what I've read in current submissions that recent past decisions from the council have been incorrectly or wrongly made, or without due consideration to the relationship of Maori and their culture and their traditions. My third point is that there are a number of specific things that are currently in place within the council which allow Maori to be fully involved in the decision-making processes of the council. And I've set those out there in the middle of the first page. My next point would be that if you are elected from a Maori ward, then you represent the entire community. However, I sense there is an issue with that, because that does that mean that you will really go into bat for everyone? I suggest your loyalty is going to be with those who are empowered to vote for you. And so only those on the Maori roll are going to be able to vote in the Maori wards, rather than have the ability to vote for any candidate. And I suggest that this is a significant limitation on true representation. My next point concerns the Treaty of Waitangi, and my submission is that it gives no authority for the creation of separate Māori wards. The treaty gave Māori the same rights as British subjects, no more, no less. And in signing it, the chiefs ceded sovereignty to the Crown, and the Crown agreed to protect the property rights of all New Zealanders. And I've quoted at the top of the second page there from Justice Bisson in the New Zealand Maori lands case in 1987. And this is good law. It was necessary for the chiefs to cede the right to govern in favour of Her Majesty, who would then be responsible to establish a settled form of civil government for the benefit of both Her Majesty's subjects and the native population. There's no suggestion, no legal interpretation from the New Zealand courts which has come out and says that that gives a right of co-governance. Of course, the Local Government Act throws on you as a council a duty to recognise the Crown's responsibility under the principles of the treaty, and section 4, which I've set out there, specifically covers that. But it's not mandatory, it's not compulsory. You only have the power to create separate wards under the Local Electoral Act. And you wouldn't expect there to be a compulsory requirement to have wards, because local authorities are not treaty partners. Only the Crown is a partner with Maori. My last point is to suggest that I think that your proposal to establish the Maori wards is wrong. I think it should have gone out to the people first. No one here campaigned last year on a plank of advocating for Maori wards. It wasn't signalled to voters before the election, and no candidate campaigned on that policy. And I've just drawn attention there, the news overnight, I think you probably may have caught up with the Hawke's Bay Regional Council decided yesterday that the question of whether that region should have dedicated Maori constituencies would go back to the people in the October 2022 election. And if the council resolved to poll its constituents, then the will of the people will decide. And surely nothing could be more democratic than that. Thanks.
Does anyone have a question of Gordon? No? Tony. Make sure everyone use their microphones today, because some of our colleagues are watching the live stream because they are out of town.
So Gordon, you're right in that it's not mandatory nor
Questions only.
nor compulsory to have Māori wards, but you fully accept that the Local Electoral Act fully provides for the ability to create Māori wards.
Correct. It
So
allows
the Crown has provided legislation to enable us to create Māori wards.
it's an enabling provision, yes.
Thank you.
No more questions? Thank you, Gordon. Thanks a lot. So next I'm going to invite Tina Nata up. Tina, make yourself at home. We're trying to be very informal and relaxed, so take a seat. Are you going to go with Dale? Dale and Tina? Yep, that's
Actually,
all good.
Dale will speak first and I'll score.
Thank you. The floor is yours. So about 5 minutes, Dale, and I will, and then you can pass over to Tina. Thank you. And you can just leave the microphones on in front of you. Yep.
Kia ora anō tātou. So my name is Deo Takitimu. I'm one of the foundational members of the anti-racism working group that was established by this council. In fact, on the 14th of October, where the council voted, it was established on the 14th of October and the council voted on the 13th of August for the creation of an anti-racism commitment which entailed historical and contextual understanding and enabling the Gisborne District Council to research its past and present, and an examination of policies and practices of the council, and an identification of significant issues and interventions, and the development of a measurement framework in terms of progressing towards anti-racism. The anti-racism working group is in fact an expert group set up to advise the council on matters exactly like this. And so we appear today to speak to the submission put in on the matter of Māori wards, and note that there is significant support within the Tairawhiti, hapū and iwi for the establishment of Māori wards, and that is a matter that Tina will speak to in her submission. And moving to the point of the Tiriti o Waitangi, the Anti-Racism Working Group considers that pursuant to the Tiriti o Waitangi, this council does have some obligations to tangata whenua and to ensuring adequate tangata whenua representation. That is not to say that that would be the full and complete recognition of the rights protected and the expression of the rights protected by Te Tiriti o Waitangi, but it would be some measure of progressing towards proper representation and proper honourable implementation of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Unlike the previous submitter, we do not consider that the Treaty of Waitangi was a treaty of cession that has been widely disputed, and in fact the finding of the Crown's expert Treaty Waitangi Tribunal in 2014 found that sovereignty was indeed not ceded by the Treaty of Waitangi on the 6th of February 1840, and in fact remains extant to this day. That means that we are considering the representation over a section of lands in this country that are considered unceded in their sovereignty. To provide some measure of representation within a system that has been predicated on exactly the opposite is the bare minimum we think this working group would propose that the council goes to adopt the proposal of Māori wards, but we think that is a progressive and intermediary first step, but there are several other steps that would need to be taken to give full actualisation to the protections contained in Te Tiriti o Waitangi. We do not agree that the Treaty of Waitangi obligations rest with the Crown and stay with the Crown and do not impact on local council. Local council is in fact a creation of the Crown, and reference, as you commonly do, to the Local Government Act will give you no doubt as to that. And therefore, in creating those representative groups out in the regions by way of local governance, the Crown has in fact been required to ensure that its obligations are carried through by those that it has provided delegated authority to, and that would include local councils, DHBs and the like. With respect, I don't think it is up to members of a population majority to sit in front of the council and declare that Māori are adequately represented by the current membership. That is a position that only Māori are in a position to give a full and wholesome answer to, and it is up to Māori to decide if they are adequately represented by the current regime, and overwhelmingly they have said no. This current representative schema does not adequately represent Māori, and the creation of Māori wards as a step towards greater representation within this House and within the dealings of Council is considered, as I said, an intermediary first step. There have been several councils throughout the country that have seen it as progressive to adopt Māori wards within the enabling legislation that has been provided. And in fact, the Minister, Nanaia Mahuta, has said that she will be reviewing and looking at this legislation more comprehensively during this next term of government. She has foreshadowed that there will be less discretion going forward. And so we see this as an opportunity for Tairawhiti now, while the current regime is in place, to put a real Tairawhiti stamp on how Māori representation will happen. waiting for compulsion from Wellington has never been something that's sat well with the Tairāwhiti or with the Gisborne area. And in fact, if we can preempt that by putting measures in place that look uniquely like the Tairāwhiti, that will mean we have some measure of control about that, or will increase our chances of having some measure of control about that come the time that central government makes a move on that. I'm not speaking directly to some of the points within the submission in regards to international standards, in regards to the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Safe to say that that is a document that has been endorsed by the New Zealand government on behalf of this country, and it is considered internationally to be the minimum standards required for the well-being of Indigenous people. And there are several provisions in there, and they're noted in our submission in regards to adequate representation. It is, I think, more important for this council to consider those issues carefully within this region, being a unitary council, being a body that contains essentially both the regional and district council provisions, unlike other areas in this country where representation at a district level may not have been agreed to, but at a regional level there is other provision for Māori representation, tangata whenua, mana whenua representation. So I think in this area in the Tairāwhiti, if Māori representation and Māori wards are not secured within this council, they're not secured anywhere. In regards to local government representation, I think that's a really important point. The stakes are higher here. In regards to further recommendations that we make within the submission, the development initially of the Tangata Whenua Standing Committee was seen as something very progressive and something of much promise and hope for the Tangata Whenua populations here. Having been newly established in 2000, it was then disestablished in 2001 by the incoming mayor at that time. But it is part of our recommendation alongside the vote in favour of Māori wards that the Tangata Whenua Standing Committee is re-established. And on top of that, that the council support the establishment of voting seats on, in fact, all council committees for members of the Tangata Whenua Committee, to make that really have some teeth in terms of its representation and to move this region beyond symbolism like flagpoles and those sorts of things outside into real, genuine representation at this table of a Māori worldview. So in summary, our recommendation is that the council vote to establish Māori wards, that the council further seek to re-establish the Tangata Whenua Committee that is representative of hapū and urban Māori in our region, and that the council support the establishment of voting seats on all council committees for members of the Tangata Whenua Committee, then re-established. Kia ora tātou.
Thanks a lot. Any questions of Dale before we hand over to Tina? Just use your microphone, please.
Very good submission. In terms of recommending people to sit on various committees, who would nominate? Where would it come from? Hapū? Iwi itself, tribal authority, or from Marae?
I think probably the mechanics of that, if the council makes a decision in principle to proceed with it, the mechanics of that would take some unpackaging and further consideration, and that's something probably the anti-racism working group could assist the council on making those considerations and engaging. We are cognizant that the treaty is signed with hapū, and that's the basis of the rights holding is with the hapū collective. So we're not necessarily proposing off the bat, and like I said, the mechanics would need to be worked out, but we're not necessarily proposing off the bat that you would have representatives of 80 hapū necessarily, although it could be ambitious to do so in the future. However, what we do know is that those rights holdings would need to have some adequate representation, and it takes some probably creativity to work out how that's going to happen, and certainly some engagement with those rights holders to ensure their satisfaction about that.
Can I answer that as well, as I'm also a member of the same working group? And just to note that particularly within the joint management agreement and also within Ngā Rohe moana o ngā hapū o Ngāti Porou, we have there some demonstrated mechanisms where hapū have been able to come together and work collectively with council and with our iwi authority to be able to advance hapū interests. So there are models already at play there that we could capitalise upon to be able to nominate people who would be representative in those roles and those seats.
Thank you. Councillor Cranston.
Yeah, that does answer my question a little bit, but you might want to expand on it because you did say that boards were an intermediary first step. So I just wondered what the ideal end position was.
That's the cause for probably some discussion about constitutional reform that would occur at a national level and then filter into the regions. Coming back from that ideal sort of discussion, and New Zealand seems to be on a trajectory to that, but it's a longer term discussion to have. Within this context, I would say, and we reference in the submission the report of Jane Luton in terms of local government in the Tairāwhiti, and that's I think not just recommended reading for councillors, should be compulsory reading across this district in terms of the genesis of local government. And once there is a true appreciation of that, the rectification or rebalancing or realignment of a relationship between the current council and tangata whenua for better representation, I think becomes clear in terms of the challenge that it would be, but also we are conscious that there are a number of things that are currently within council's jurisdiction or control that don't require compulsion from a statutory timeframe set by Wellington that the council can do to increase representation around the table. And that's why we make the recommendation about the re-establishment of the Tangata Whenua Standing Committee and representation in terms of decision making around council. But there's a number of areas that the newly established anti-racism kahui will be looking at that will do essentially an audit across those areas to give us some indication and enable us to recommend back to council where that representation can take place.
Thank you. Tina, the floor is yours.
Tēnā tātou katoa. So I've come, thank you very much, first of all, for being flexible with your times, and to our other submitter, I think his name was Gordon, for also being flexible to slot in there so I could catch my breath. I've come from Maori Marae this morning. We were up at the feet of Hikurangi and Whanokau before dawn this morning to tuku karakia, to bless our Raukumara Plaimaunga project and set it on a fantastic pathway. And I thought a lot about that project as I drove down here, because it's a very exciting manifestation of partnership. We had Minister Kiri Tapu Allen with us this morning. We had the heads of the Department of Conservation this morning, and it is a long overdue step that we have made towards working together fruitfully by securing representation and securing the voices of local Maori and the caretaking of our taonga. And it's with the hope of that event, the hope of that step that the Department of Conservation have taken alongside us, that I've come to speak with you this morning about the hope and potential of the step that sits before you in consideration of Māori wards. So I'm speaking today on behalf of numerous hapū marae clusters and organisations within the Ngāti Porou Rohe who have endorsed this submission. And in addition to the listed names on the submission, which are also democratically elected to represent hundreds and probably in fact thousands more of Ngāti Porou landowners and residents, I've also been specifically requested to include the names who have also submitted in writing, but they won't be here to talk to their submissions of Te Aroha Kanarahi Trust and Wharekahika, Tārere B and Te Araroa Tokararangi Forestry Blocks in Horoira, Taharora Marae and Iritekura Marae in Waipiro. A number of those are at Hinerupe now in Tangi mode, and so, but they've just asked that their names be added to this in support of the points that we're making. So there's many issues that are going to be raised in today's submissions in front of you, but I'm suggesting today that you really need to consider two parental questions to ask yourselves. One, does distinct representation matter? And two, If so, is distinct representation being achieved by GDC? And when we ask ourselves, does distinct representation matter, we're addressing these types of suggestions and questions about whether non-Māori can best determine the interests of Māori, whether Māori have distinct interests that should and can be advanced by Māori, and does distinct representation of Māori detract from the representative interests of non-Māori? All of those types of questions or challenges translate into, does distinct representation matter? And this is a question I'd like to point out that doesn't just relate to Māori. It matters to women. We've just finished celebrating 125 years of the women's vote in Aotearoa, and Aotearoa being one of the first Western nations to advance the women's vote. Having women's voices in council matters. It matters to people of colour. This is why we celebrate the civil rights movement. That's why we celebrate and quote great leaders like Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela. Representation matters and diversity at the table matters. It matters enough that we developed regional councils to ensure that the distinct voice as a region was developed. And if securing our distinct voice as a region didn't matter, then we might as well have been governed by Wellington. The very justification for local government speaks to the importance of distinct representation. But guess what? The Crown doesn't have a treaty with regional, the Crown doesn't have a treaty with regional governments, and the Crown doesn't have a treaty with women. The Crown doesn't have a treaty with people of colour or any other marginalised group. The Crown has a treaty with Maori. We are treaty partners. It has a treaty specifically in Te Tairawhiti with hapū, because we did not sign the Treaty of Waitangi, we signed Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And out of the 535 signatures across Aotearoa, 505 of those signatures were on Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Maori document. In Aotearoa, in Tairawhiti, 100% of the signatories were on Te Tiriti o Waitangi, because that is the only document that came to us. So in this context, in the context of ngā hapū o Tairawhiti, of course, distinct representation matters. And who has said so? Well, as you've heard already today, Section 4 of the Local Government Act says so, where it directs local governments to take the treaty into account. And the Crown itself has outlined that Article 3 of the treaty should be interpreted as providing distinct representation for Māori. The actual Crown adjudicator on treaty issues, the Waitangi Tribunal, has found that the correct interpretation of Article 3 is security of distinct representation for Māori in government. But also Gisborne District Council has itself recognised the distinct representative rights of Māori when, in setting up the previous Tangata Whenua Committee, Council said, and I quote, that Māori were a community with different values and needs, particularly given the high proportion of the Māori population and their revered cultural history in the district. So this is further, of course, to the multiple commitments that Council has made in its long-term plan and spatial plan to include Māori voices and decision-making processes. That should be, what we're saying is that should be safeguarded, not just left up to electoral chance. And that if you are going to leave it up to electoral chance, you are not doing everything in your power to live up to the commitments that you have made in those documents. I would again ask you to consider this in a gender context as well. Do you feel, ngā wāhine ladies, that a man can speak for the interests of women? Do you think that women bring distinct value to the decision-making process? How would you feel to have a man tell you, oh, I think we can speak on your behalf, especially on issues that specifically relate to you as a woman, or in ways that, for instance, relate specifically to us as Māori, like recognition of sacred sites or Maori o te wai. These things relate specifically to us. Or even more pertinently, for a regional context, how would you find it if or would you find it at all acceptable for Auckland to go, it's okay, Tairāwhiti, I think we got you. I think we understand how you feel about these things. We'll make your decisions for you. And if they just decided to take over governing us, because it's the same kind of logic that works when non-Māori say, it's all right, we got you. We understand you and your voice, distinct voice is not required at this table. We'll leave it up to electoral chance. Representation matters. If it didn't, we wouldn't have a council today. And so is distinct representation being achieved for Māori in the Gisborne District Council is the next question. Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Last Thursday, when the decision was made around those replicas, I think it's general, I can say confidently that there's general discontent and concern from Māori in Tūranga around whether or not we were represented in that decision. Te Aitanga Hauiti asked for one of the models, and that's great. That seems to work really easily when the interests of Māori align with the interests of non-Māori. It makes it a very easy decision for us to make. But Māori across the region, in Ngāti Porou and across Tūranga, we're very clear with you that we did not want those replicas up at all, and we don't feel that that was represented in the decision that was made. Our say was balanced up with the say of other constituents, and it was decided that they could either go up through the museum or through some other arrangement through the original applicants. That is a clear, immediate example of the failure to duly represent the broadly expressed interests of Māori. The area that I'm speaking to within this submission extends from Pōtikirua right through Matakawa, across down into the Waiapu, in through Tikitiki, down to Ruatoria, out to Tikapa and Waiō-Matatini, down through to Waipiro Bay, down to Tokomaru Bay, down to Okuri Marae, and also includes the endorsement of Te Poho Rawiri Marae here in Gisborne as well. It would be an egregious miscarriage of representative justice for those voices to be spoken over today and say that they are actually well represented in the system when they say that they are not. Our participation in the electoral system does not suggest endorsement of the system as it stands at the moment. And I can say this as a researcher, that's my job. I'm a researcher and I've been contracted in 2006 by the Electoral Commission to run a study on, to carry out a study on Māori participation in the electoral system. And that's also noted in our submission as well. In that study, we found that Māori participation in the electoral system does not equal endorsement. In fact, Māori under-participation in the electoral system has, though, been linked to discontent with that system. So, as I've said, it is our voice that matters here. If you as a woman say, I don't feel represented, think about how it would feel for a man to then say, no, I think you are. And if we were to say, I don't think you're able to represent us as a region, Auckland. Imagine if Auckland again said, no, we think you are, we don't think you know what you're talking about. It's a pretty basic standard of justice that our voice on this matter is respected and centered in relation to whether or not we feel represented. So I think I've made a pretty clear case here that one, representation matters, and two, distinct representation is not being achieved by the voices, as quoted by the voices that should be centred and matter most in this question. And in accepting that we deserve distinct representation at Council, I wish to also bring us to the recommendations. I'll count them as read, but also to highlight the recommendation around voting seats on council committees. Because if it is accepted, one, that distinct representation matters, and two, that distinct representation is not currently being achieved, then it follows that council needs to take every possible opportunity to be able to step into the responsibilities and secure that. You have multiple means at your disposal here to do that. Māori wards are very important, and of course we support them, but you can also place safeguards around our representation that are not subject to referendums or extended timeframes. You can utilise the Local Government Act provisions to provide those voting seats on the committees that could be collaboratively designated by council, nominated by hapū with full voting rights. We don't have to wait for the next election or indeed a 2028 election. We can do that straight away. So yes, we support Māori Wards. 2, we also call for representation to be safeguarded at a committee level with hapū seats on committees with full voting rights. And 3, we also call for the necessary capacity building for that process to be resourced by council through the long-term budget. Before I shift on to Dr. Tāwhai's submission, are there any questions?
Any questions of Tina? Just remember to use your microphone.
I'm just a bit curious in terms of good presentation, good submission. But are you telling me or telling us that Māori are not capable through the electoral system?
I'm saying that Maori participation in the electoral system should not be seen as an endorsement of the system as it stands, and that's been carried out through research already. That's in the submission, and that underrepresentation in the current system has been linked by the same research to discontent with the system. And I think the voices here are quite clearly saying that we do not feel duly represented in the current submission. That is the position of those who have endorsed the submission. Yes.
Thank you.
Tina, I just want to, are you speaking to 3 submissions? Just my list is getting up.
Sorry, you know, there was that was the 10-minute submission on behalf of the hapū, and there is a 5-minute submission on behalf of Dr. Veronica Tāwhai, who is today receiving her doctorate in Palmerston North at Massey University, so she can't make it with us today. Now, to Te Tiriti o Waitangi, I take it that you have read Dr. Veronica Tāwhai and Mr. Carberry's statement on Te Tiriti o Waitangi. They are acknowledged experts on the matter of citizenship and Te Tiriti o Waitangi and participation in government. Their analysis is vitally important for our council to understand. And as I pointed out a little bit earlier, actually, I don't think I pointed it out. Some of the people who are speaking today in the submissions that you are reading come from direct descendants of the people, of the names and the signatories on Te Tiriti as well. And so Te Tiriti o Waitangi, by that I mean the Maori document, the one that was signed here, is vitally important for us to understand within its own context. So the points, though, that are being raised by Dr. Tāwhai and Mr. Carberry, in addition to the fact that it was signed by hapū, they've gone through each of the articles to talk about how those articles speak to the question that's in front of you now. But I also want to raise that the first article relates to the provision of kawanatanga, and this is the treaty provision or te tiriti provision that the Crown draws upon for its very existence and ability to be able to govern. Kawanatanga relates to government, and it's that provision that provided the space, well, that was taken by the Crown to be able to justify its government in Aotearoa. So if the treaty and if te tiriti does not matter, then local government does not matter and central government does not matter. And if it matters enough for us to form a government on, then it needs to matter enough to be held to account upon. So Article 1 in relation to kawanatanga and the practice of good governance for all citizens includes Maori constituents, requires local government engagement of Maori expertise on all council matters, social, political, economic and environmental, and we're currently not getting that. This can be better ensured through guaranteed representation for Māori on council, such as the establishment of wards. But also, kawanatanga can only be exercised with due recognition to tino rangatiratanga, and that can only be understood as distinct independence of voice. Kawana was understood by our tipuna that signed te tiriti as being subordinate to his own rangatira, Queen Victoria. The concept that was signed up to by them was actually that rangatiratanga signed up to by them was actually that the rangatiratanga secured by our tipuna was superior to kawanatanga. If I was to ask the governor of the day, well, who is your rangatira? He would have said Queen Victoria. So when securing rangatiratanga for the hapū and securing kawanatanga, that would have been the power arrangement that they were signing up to in 1840. What we have in the circumstances is pretty much the exact opposite of that, where kawanatanga assumes and holds the end authority over all decisions, and rangatiratanga is seen as subordinate to that, or subject to that, to kawanatanga. But still, what we are calling for here, and this relates to this idea of being the bare minimum, is that kawanatanga needs to be exercised in light of rangatiratanga, and that this is advanced through due representation. Article 2 is, as Dr. Tawhai raises, tino rangatiratanga and the rights of local hapū to autonomy and authority over representation and expression of our concerns, priorities, aspirations, and how they might be progressed. But also Article 2 relates to taonga. Now, taonga is a distinctly qualitative concept that requires Maori minds and Maori hearts at the table to be able to articulate it in any given context. It's not something that you can just look up and then apply to the context that's in front of you. And all of these things, all of the points that are raised through Dr. Tawhai's very sound submission relate directly to Te Tiriti and Tiriti Justice, specifically in relation to Gisborne District Council. And then, of course, Article 3, ngā tikanga katoa ritetahi. And as I pointed out, the Crown, the official Crown adjudicator in relation to Te Tiriti, the Waitangi Tribunal has itself found, first of all, that Māori did not cede sovereignty. And secondly, that Article 3 relates to equity of representation. That means that we do have distinct interests that deserve distinct representation, both at central and at local government levels. So I'll leave it there.
I just want to say to councillors, it's on page 87 of 208, the last submission.
Oh, thank you.
Any questions of Tina before Meredith?
Just representation seems to be the word, and so how can we teach our community? How can we have this conversation in community in respect to representation, what it means? Because I sense that is constantly what comes up for people understanding it. So would there be a solution to having community kōrero to unpack what representation is?
Oh, I think we need to be having, and a part of this again relates down back to the constitutional reform. We need more community discussion, and this is actually the subject of Dr. Tawhai's PhD, is around citizenship education in relation to Te Tiriti, to make sure that we have a broad citizenship baseline level of understanding around what Te Tiriti means in relation to due representation in government. So definitely her findings in her research have found that we need more community education in that area, and definitely through the discussions that have been raised through the constitutional reform projects, both being run through the government, but also the Matike Mai constitutional reform work as well of previous years. All of those things provide opportunities for us to be able to engage in that conversation. We thoroughly support the continuation of that discussion. There are huge education and understanding gaps around the application of Te Tiriti within our citizenship frameworks and within local and central government representation. Yes.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Gail.
Tēnā koutou.
So next I would invite Patricia Donnelly. Welcome, Patricia. Please take a seat, and you can just leave those microphones on there. They pick up from a metre away, so you can just sit back, relax, share your thoughts with us. Good morning.
I'm here on behalf of the older people of Gisborne to do a submission, because I mean, I think I did say about the Māori Wards, we've got several people on the council that are partly Maori. And if Maori are good enough, why don't they stand and get on these? You know, they're saying that they need special rights. Well, if they're good enough, let them do it. But I want to speak on the older people of Gisborne. They've been marginalised for the last couple of years because a lot of them are not digitally knowledgeable. And I must admit myself, I'm not that good. And a lot of times they don't even know about these things. The council is saying we want community consultation, but a lot of older people don't even know what's going on. And I mean, with this Māori ward, it was just that I heard on the radio that it had to be in by last Friday. And I do get emails from the council on, you know, what's going on, but I must admit that I quite often don't even look at them. But then I did go into it and found out that you would only do it online. I did come down to the council to see if there was any pamphlets or anything that I could give anybody, and they said there weren't. So I did, with the help of my sister-in-law, I went on and I did do a submission. But that's what I'm saying. For a lot of older people, they can't give they're not being communicated with because they don't even know about it. And it happened with when they changed the name to Taronganui Kiwa. A lot of people didn't even know about that. And that's the same even now. And with the Endeavour models, at least you had pamphlets that could be taken to people, but when you know, they don't even know anything about it. So you can't say that you're communicating with the community. And that was my submission on it. And my submission has only taken 5 minutes.
There's a question from Phil, Patricia.
You raised some good points.
I must admit I'm very nervous though.
Don't be nervous,
Don't
Patricia.
be nervous. I'm not that. Am I? Do you not think we have consulted enough?
No, I don't think you have, especially as I say, with people that aren't, because you're doing it all online. And there's a lot of people that, you know, and it was only that I heard it on the radio, and I do get the paper and I do read it, but I hadn't even seen it in there. And that's only a couple of weeks ago that I thought then, well, you know, I needed to have a look and see. And I do feel in the last couple of years you have marginalised older people that can't do that, that you're not really listening to. Well, they can't have their say.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Patricia. Any more questions? No? Debbie, last question.
I was just wondering if that is correct, that you could only make a submission online.
So Patricia, I'm concerned that you were saying there were no hard copies, or that someone at council told you there were no hard copies, because I know at my office there are hard copies with information and that you can feedback. So I'm sorry that the hard copies were not made available to you, because I know that there are some hard copies. I know,
like with the Endeavour models, you did have, but then even with that, you had to come down here and get them. And there again, a lot of old people really didn't know about it. And then even again with the changing of the name, again, you know, you had to come and get things for people to do. So.
Thanks a lot, Patricia. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next I'm going to invite Roger Rankin. Roger, are you here? Thank you. Please take a seat, Roger. Make yourself at home. Welcome.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm against the proposal to have separate Maori wards. I have a lot of respect for Meredith and Pat. They're both open about what they stand for. I especially admire Meredith for standing up against racism in the council chambers. That takes a lot of guts. I expect most of us feel uncomfortable when we hear racist comments, but not many actually do anything about it. As a farmer, I work with hundreds of people: shearers, accountants, salespeople, fencers, council employees, pilots, scrub cutters, consultants, lawyers, truck drivers, policemen, digger drivers, and shepherds. Initially, I struggled. I quickly worked out that we were all the same. Each of us got out of bed in the morning to go to work, to earn some money to pay the rent or mortgage, buy food for the family, pay the power bill, keep the car going so we could take the kids to whatever during the weekend, and hopefully buy a couple of beers at the end of the week. There were people with degrees through to people who'd been brought up in gangs and had done time. All of them had life experiences that I learned from. We were all at work for the same basic reasons. In my mind, it makes us all the same. The Gisborne Herald reports that our population is 50% Maori. So if people wish to vote along ethnic lines, the opportunity is already there. And note, we have 3 local Maori women in Parliament. The Maori Wards booklet explaining setting up Maori wards seems to use different statistics to determine the number of wards compared to the number of 5% of voters. The electoral population, 17,500 Maori, nearly 30,000 general, total 47,500. Registered electors, 5% is 1625, total 32,500. There's a 15,000 person difference. I don't know what electoral population is, but to me that's a little bit out. With the 5 proposed Maori wards and 8 general wards, the question now becomes, are there any country wards? I'm very comfortable being a Tairāwhitian / Gisborneite, and when filling in any surveys and the ethnicity question, so I always struggle with that word, and the ethnicity question, the box for other gets ticked and New Zealander or Kiwi is inserted. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Roger. Any questions of Roger from councillors?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roger, good submission. You raise a very good point. If Maori wards are, as they're proposed, successful, where does that leave you asked the right question, where does that leave the rural representation, which is huge and necessary and critical to the well-being of our district?
Question?
There's only 8, would only be 8 general seats, so there might be 1 country ward, if any. What do you think? I don't know. That's for you guys, isn't it?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Next, I invite Tui Marino. Tui? Welcome, Tui. Please take a seat, make yourself at home. Kia ora.
Pea no tuatahi ka mihi atu ki te hunga kua riru atu ki tū o te aro. Otira, thank you for the opportunity to give a presentation on the issue of the Māori Ward. And I'm here to support, on behalf of Te Aitanga Hawiti Iwi, hapū, those iwi and hapū throughout the region that are endeavouring to have this legislation, this process implemented. The problem I noticed in terms of the processes, the guarantees of rangatiratanga are compromised in the process, and I'll explain it this way, in that I've noticed that the voting process on a kaupapa Māori issue has a huge area for Māori as being sidelined by opening the opportunity for others to have a say on a take Māori. And what happens, you'll get the tyranny of the majority. That's what's happening. And you know, the fear is that the process that is provided for in the, as I understand, the 2002 Local Government Act, may continue to be sidelined. And I wonder if there's no Māori ward then who is working or operating the ward? And why is Māori not included in terms of equal partnership? And so the point being is equal partnership, and that and they want to encourage council to have a good look at the process that allows the greater majority of the community to undermine, if they so desire, the aspirations of Māori to have equal decision-making rights and matters that matter to us, and particularly on the East Coast Tairaki here. So yeah, that's basically what I want to do, is encourage council to implement the process that's been provided for by the national government. And the other point, while I might make an opportunity, is a reflection. I suppose what it does would be to remove some critical aspects of discrimination against Māori community. And you know, an example for is in terms of the local government or the GDC's role, is that the Pou Whakairo, and I mean particularly for Te Aitanga Hauiti, the Pou Whakairo that were memorials for those of Te Aitanga Hauiti and C Company wasn't provided for in those carvings there, the Pou outside the museum. So what we want, that type of discrimination to be rectified. And the proposal that I put down to do with that in terms of the Māori wards and addressing those things is that a Pou Whakairo be commissioned to rectify that part of our discriminatory relationship in that particular area in terms of cultural well-being, iwi hapū well-being. And I reliably inform you that the Hauritian corporations are happy to take the second endeavour to go over to Ōpautama, and those will go towards Ōpautama Cooks Co, and that would go some way towards reminding each other that we've got a relationship, and I'm here to ask and join others to ask council to have the courage to do that.
Thank you, Tui. Any questions? Bill?
One of the questions I have, which is troubling, in here, Māori do not vote together. You know, and I know, we're the cruelest to our own at times. Do you think by putting the Māori wards in place, we're going to improve on that?
Absolutely. Breath of fresh air.
Thanks a lot, too. Thank you for your submission. Next, I am going to invite Aubrey Ria. Welcome, Aubrey. Please take a seat. Kia ora, Shah. Make yourself at home. The floor is yours.
Kia ora tātou. Ko te sirangi te maunga, ko suranga nui te awa, ko te poho raori te marae, ko hine I tihia te rangi te wharekai, ko Ngāti Oneone te hapū, ko Aubrey Ria ahau. Tuatahi me mihi kia tātou katoa, ko tae mai ki te wānanga I tēnei kaupapa, tēnā tātou katoa, mai mua ki muri. Before I begin, you will hear me refer to Te Tiriti o Waitangi as mentioned by Tina this morning, not the Treaty of Waitangi, as our tipuna of Te Tairāwhiti did not sign or agree to the English version. And as we all know and understand, the translations and meanings of both documents greatly differ. Between the 5th and the 12th of May 1840, Rawiri Te Eke Tū o Te Rangi signed the Treaty of Waitangi for and behalf of the people of Ngāti Oneone, who represent an area which now resides from the Turanganui River through Puhikaiti, Sponge Bay, Wainui, Tatapauri, Makarori to Pauawa. Rawiri had a son named Hirini Tuahine Te Kani, who sided with Crown forces during land wars, sacrificing in some cases his whakapapa connections through acts of war with his relations. Hirini had a son named Heta Te Kani, who also had a son named Heta Vani Te Kani, whose photo hangs in a place of honour amongst his cousins, uncles and sons within the Sea Company Memorial House. He served within the Home Guard on Titirangi Maunga. His eldest son, Umuariki Ramli Te Kani, fought and died for the Crown on the 1st of August in 1944 in World War II and is buried in the Florence War Cemetery in Italy. He was 23 years old. He fought for the vision of Tāpirana Ngata and the concept of the price of citizenship, for the goal of Māori being treated as equal citizens. Umuariki was one of 4 brothers that committed themselves to the war effort and fought for the same cause. The youngest brother, Tokorua Bani Te Kani, was too young to serve. He instead served his community through his mahi at Te Poho Rawiri Marae as caretaker and later kaumātua. He hosted the then Prince and Princess of Wales during their visit to Te Poho Rawiri in 1983. He was proactive in many community events and activities supporting groups such as Te Rōpū Wahine Māori, Toko I Te Ora and Ngāti Kāpō, the Blind Foundation, hosting their national annual hui at Te Poho Rawiri in the late 90s. He created many lasting relationships with both Māori and Pākehā and on many occasions worked with and supported the council of the time. Tokorua is my grandfather. My mother is Charlotte and I have 4 children of my own, which means our whānau is now heading into the 8th generation where we have continuously and actively worked towards the goal of equal partnership as promised so within Te Tiriti o Waitangi. We have had generations who have acted as local and national cultural advisors for and behalf of marae, whānau, iwi and hapū. However, the aspirations of my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Rawiri Te Eke Tū o Te Rangi, who signed Aira, yes, on the Māori version of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, are yet to be recognised 8 generations later. As a teacher in both Kura Kaupapa Māori and mainstream schools here in Tūranga for almost 10 years, we are told and taught to teach our students about the values and principles of the treaty. The principles are defined as the 3 Ps: partnership, participation, and protection. Partnership requires working together with iwi, hapū, and whānau. It requires Māori to be involved at all levels of decision-making, planning, and development. On Tuesday, November the 1st, 2016, Anna Clements wrote in School News New Zealand an article called Te Tiriti o Waitangi, Living the Values. She stated partnership is engaging with Māori communities, having Māori representatives, equality for Māori and power sharing. She goes on to say sometimes these relationships will take time and effort, but they are worth it. Protection requires actively protecting Māori knowledge, interests, values and other taonga, including culture and identity. Participation requires that there is an emphasis on positive Māori involvement in all levels. Māori Wards can be the beginning of this council's decision to commit to their obligations as treaty partners. We can all start to live and breathe that which we as teachers are asked to teach our children. You, the council, can provide an example for our children by making a commitment to strong partnerships, thus leaving the door open for greater, more meaningful participation to happen organically. Ultimately, showing the children of Tūranganui that Te Tiriti is important. It's our founding document, and the value of learning and understanding its principles and values is priceless. Partnership, participation and protection for Māori in a region where the Māori population is greater than 50% should be common sense. Last week at the council's meeting, when the topic of the Endeavour replicas came, I was sitting in the back of the room. I heard and understood comments that you are all representatives of the community. I ask you all now to also remember that yes, you were elected by the community to perform the duties of council, which include the requirements of local government Act 2002, that each of you will uphold the principles and the values of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which are the basics of what we as teachers are asked to teach our children: partnership, participation and protection. And to practice the foundation values of Te Tiriti we implement into our classrooms. I urge you all to vote in favour of Māori Wards, to vote in favour of partnership, participation and protection. It's time for the 8 generations, not just within my whānau, but many whānau Māori who have worked and continue to work towards the principles of Te Tiriti to finally feel that positive change is coming. Equality, as named so in Te Tiriti o Waitangi, is finally 8 generations later being upheld here in Tūranganui Ākiwa by Te Kaunihira o Te Tairawhiti. Tēnā tātou katoa.
Do you want to do double A? I will also then invite you, Chris. Thank you. Make yourself at home, take a seat. And the floor is yours. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou, ngā rangatira, ngā mema o te kaunihera, ko wai au. I te taha o tōku mama, ko au he moko punu ngā iwi a tōru o Tūranganui Ākiwa, ko Karen Johansson ahau. I also bring to this discussion a background, not only as mana whenua I Tūranganui Ākiwa, but as an educator and a former Indigenous Rights Commissioner with the New Zealand Human Rights Commission. It's a bit of a shame actually that Aubrey spoke before me because she was such a beautiful and eloquent presentation, and she took all my observations, all my books. I hope maybe to reinforce that message because today my observations are set inside the context of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi. I refer to both for reasons that Aubrey explained, and Te Tiriti o Waitangi is recognised today as the founding human rights document for Aotearoa New Zealand. As a treaty is a contract, an agreement, a bond between two parties, in this case, tangata whenua and tangata tiriti. It is, as Bishop Manuhuia Bennett put it, a promise of two peoples to take the best possible care of each other. Therefore, it belongs to us all. The treaty is currently, as Aubrey has mentioned and other speakers have mentioned, usefully characterised as essentially being about partnership and participation and protection. Māori percentage of Aotearoa New Zealand population is 16.5%. This is not reflected in Māori local government representation around our nation. It sits at around 10%. Māori population in Tairawhiti is 50.3%. I ask myself, what is the representation around this table? So let's look at the arguments in favour, some of the arguments in favour of a Māori ward structure. And I do reference to some extent a report which was published by the Department of Internal Affairs in 2009, when it was examining the experiences provided by Environment BOP at the time, which established Māori wards in 2004. So the experience has shown some of these favourable arguments. The establishment of a Māori constituency structure would be a key mechanism to facilitate Māori input and participation in council, which we know isn't particularly a pretty sight today. A symbol of the validation and respect for iwi Māori as tangata whenua, the council emphatically demonstrating its commitment to iwi Māori and the treaty through action and not just words. The establishment of Māori electorate seats guarantees Māori representation on council. It guarantees Māori representation on council and therefore more effective direct representation for tangata whenua in the council decision-making process. Recognition that Māori participation and engagement needs to take place at all levels of council, contributing specific to our Māori expertise. Māori wards may encourage more Māori, and I think particularly of young Māori, to participate by voting or even standing for office. Strong collaborative leadership leading to better decision-making, greater inclusiveness and support for economic recovery. Recognition that relationships with Māori are diverse and dynamic, and that the capture of these diverse Māori voices requires multiple approaches which evolve and develop over time. The democratic principle of one person, one vote is theoretically preserved across the Māori and general constituencies, although there are current anomalies in legislation which weaken the application of this principle, e.g. the 5% petition provision in the Local Government Act, which can trigger a binding poll. No other ward can be challenged in this way. There should at least be a right of appeal or objection. And this is despite greater representation for Māori being an obligation of the treaty. Is it possible that if Māori wards had been in place at the time, the process around the Endeavour replicas reinstatement would have been managed differently? Iwe anō, rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou katoa.
Kia ora katoa.
Dr. Jill.
Ngā mihi kia koutou ngā rangatira o te kaunahira o te tai rāwhiti. Kia ora rawa te moto pānui mai o tēnei kaupapa ngā rohenga Māori. Greetings to you as leaders of our region. Thank you for opening this discussion and giving us the opportunity to submit to you. I come to this firstly as a daughter of Te Tai Rāwhiti, my great-great-grandfather having arrived here in the 1870s, but I also come with a background of community and regional-led development. My qualifications and professional background are as a social scientist. As indicated in our online submission, we speak in support of a system that results in more equitable representation of Māori on our council. And it seems that now the Māori wards are the available mechanism by which this can happen. Acknowledge, James, and the work that you've done out there and your team and the extension of time to allow for more robust engagement to occur. Kia ora for that. Also acknowledge previous councils in 2007 and 2012 where these discussions were held and when the status quo was both times confirmed. However, it is now 2020 and this decision won't take effect for another 2 years, which is 10 years since it's last been discussed around this table. It is hoped that council will recognise the changing world that we're in and how critical it is to the future of our whole rohe to establish a mechanism where tangata whenua are inside this decision-making tent. I note that as part of the decision-making made during the discussions leading up to the 2007 election, Council argued then that because of the already high Māori population, fair and effective representation was already achievable. As experience and data shows, the general voting system does not adequately result in Māori representation, in adequate Māori representation. The already high Māori population that we have has not resulted in achieving fair and effective representation. Karen has talked about the why of Māori wards. Many submitters have also contributed their whys, and I'm not going to do that here except to support their thoughts and add 2 comments. One is treating people the same does not equate to achieving equitable results. Structures and systems are developed in our own image. And who are we? At the moment, we are those who most predominate in decision-making roles. Sometimes this creates structural barriers that are difficult for others to break through. And sometimes affirmative action or positive discrimination is required. In this case, I believe that is definitely so. Second point, I think it's to our detriment that tangata whenua leadership is not available to us here. As a region, I think we're on the cusp of a new wave, but our position is quite precarious. Tangata whenua will bring to this table the kind of leadership that I believe we need to help us go forward. For the rest of this submission, I'm going to address 4 challenges that I think we are facing and maybe some suggestions about how we could go forward. The first is we have a divided community. We're pleased to see that the majority of voices in the submissions and online comments are in support of establishing Māori wards. However, we also note there are those who believe this move is racist, divisive, unnecessary, and undemocratic. While democratic processes are most often based on a majority voice, I don't think that we can ignore those views. We have a divided community. So we need to think about how we offer the opportunity for these awkward conversations to happen, to open the dialogue in the community. I ask what's happened to those beginnings of the two-year 250 dialogue. Where have we taken those? How is this council leading those discussions? Second challenge is misinformation. There's a lack of understanding about the roles of councillors appointed under the Māori ward system. Some people think that those elected under Māori wards represent Māori, but as we know, they will be councillors for all matters and be required to represent the entire community as you all are. Possible way forward, continue the good work of the past couple of months and really build in a whole education process, not only about how to engage in participatory democracy, but also what this particular mechanism would mean for us. Third challenge, deciding the makeup of the Māori wards. People have been consulted to date, and we know about consultation and engagement, but I think ongoing engagement needs to continue to develop the next steps. Within the framework of the LGA, with iwi and hapū, I think it's really important to have substantial, robust discussions that establish the kind of Māori wards that would be particularly tairawhiti-centric. The fourth challenge, I think, is the community poll system. While I believe in people's views being canvassed, a community poll process could be problematic. How do we know that it won't get us the same result as that of a general election? That is, where those turning out to express their opinion are not representative of our population as a whole. Possible way forward, if the council decides that a community poll is the next step, or if a petition for a community poll is successfully lodged, can you please ensure that your processes of engagement enhance equitable access to the decision-making as a result of that poll? Council has a recent history of increased community engagement, and I think it would be really good to build on that. Nō reira koutou, ngā rangatira, ko oti a maua kōrero, and our best wishes for your deliberations.
Thank you for that. Any questions of Karen or Jill? Sandra.
Morning, ladies. I absolutely respect and admire both of you and your opinions thereon. My question is there a place for as well as instead of? And my point being that we've heard earlier that we stand to lose representation across our rural wards. I am a rural ward councillor and I must speak on behalf of them. Is there a place for as well as?
At the moment, the as well as equals advisory, and which puts tangata whenua or puts representation outside the tent. So unless I think the constitutional framework of the council is shifted, I guess you're thinking about numbers. I don't think it's good enough. Yes, there would be loss, and yes, it's hard. And I heard previous speakers saying it's going to take a while. It has been a while already. I don't think we can afford to wait any longer, but it is hard. But yeah, I totally would oppose the advisory process, say that Te Arawa's gone into, where you've got tangata whenua sitting outside the decision-making process. I don't know what you think.
Yes, I think there are multiple approaches. It doesn't have to be just Māori wards and no other way of engagement at all, but that perhaps is something that would be a useful discussion with tangata whenua at the time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any more questions?
If not, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
For presenting to us today. Next, we will have a break after Joe. So I'm going to invite Joe Martin to join us. Welcome, Joe. Please take a seat, make yourself at home. And then after Joe has spoken, we will take a 15-minute break. And then it will be Sean, Tekani, and then Marsha on behalf of Moira and Adam. And then we will move Tony Dobson, and then we will have some people who are going to present via Zoom to us. So we'll listen to Joe, then we'll take a quick break, and then we'll carry on and finish off with Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yep.
Hello?
That's perfect,
Right,
just
okay.
like that.
And, so? What do I do?
Yep.
Turn that one off.
Thank
Right.
you.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Your Worship and councillors. I oppose the establishment of Māori wards in the Gisborne district. If you just indulge me for a few seconds, with constitutional history. In our journey to attain universal adult suffrage, which began long ago with the invention of democracy by the ancient Greeks and the development of the rule of law by the ancient Romans, most of that time has been dominated by autocratic rule by one or a clique of a few. However, at times the light shone through with the Magna Carta and the establishment of the first parliaments in the 13th century in England, and the later attaining of supremacy of parliament and the resultant establishment of constitutional monarchy in the 17th century. However, it is only in the last 200 years that any substantial progress has been made in expanding voting rights amongst the general populace. 200 years ago, a voter had to be male, aristocratic or very wealthy, landed, non-Catholic, and in the main white. In the 100 years that followed, all qualifications of gender, race, religion, and property ownership were abolished, such that we now have universal adult suffrage, unfettered by all those previous discriminatory disqualifications. In my view, the introduction of council seats reserved to a particular race or claimed ethnicity is a serious backward step in our journey to full equal rights and obligations. With a large proportion of the local population identifying as Maori, and we've heard just before, just over 50%, Maori have the democratic means available to them, as does every other citizen, every 3 years to influence the makeup of the council without having to resort to any advantage unfairly provided by the electoral system. And that also includes coming along here today to speak to the council and making submissions. This council is very open to this type of thing. And if you look at the submissions today, no one can say no, people are not having their voice heard. We've heard the Treaty of Waitangi spoken a lot this morning. Now, just to set the scene, the Treaty of Waitangi is not the law of New Zealand unless it is specifically written into municipal law. And that's a decision of the Privy Council in 1941, Te Kina Te Hehu and the Aotea Maori Lands Board. That decision was upheld by the Lands case in 1987, the New Zealand Maori Council and the Attorney General. That said, the Treaty of Waitangi is the most important document in our nation's history, okay? But I mentioned that it is not the law unless specifically written into it. Because when people claim certain things under the treaty are a given, well, are they? The purpose of Article 3 was to grant Maori the same, and I stress the word same, rights and duties of citizenship as the people of England. Now those words are the English translation of the Maori version of the treaty. The English version says the rights of British subjects. It doesn't stress the word same. Citizenship entitles citizens to vote, to participate in the political process, and to be represented in Parliament and on local councils by democratically elected representatives. However, citizenship gives no guarantee of separate representation based on ethnicity, religion, or otherwise. In my view, the treaty cannot imply a superior form of citizenship. Any argument for different treatment under Article 3 based purely on an ethnic basis is fundamentally flawed and wrong. Let's move on to the legislation. The Electoral Act 1993, under which Maori seats in Parliament are maintained, makes no reference to the treaty or to treaty principles. Maori seats were initially established in 1867 as a temporary expedient for a period of 5 years, but that was subsequently extended because voting was restricted in those days to adult males who had individual property rights. As very few Maori males, in fact, if any, had individual title to land, this was the only way they were guaranteed parliamentary representation. And it's ironic, for 12 years after that, theoretically, any Maori male had the right to vote, but any non-Maori male had to have property rights. Whether Maori seats should continue to exist in a modern democracy when based on the ethnic mix of the last parliament, not the one just voted the other day, Maori held 23% of the seats compared with their 16% of the population remains to be seen. I would expect the Maori representation in Parliament is probably now higher, and we definitely know it's higher in the cabinet. So why do we need special rights? Likewise, the Local Electoral Act 2001, which enables councils to establish Māori wards, makes no reference to the treaty or to treaty principles. Admittedly, the Local Government Act 2002 does make reference to the treaty and requires councils to facilitate participation by Maori in local authority decision-making. People are participating. But it also requires council to make themselves aware of and have regard to the views of all of its communities. That's in section 12, I believe. Whether facilitating participation by Maori in local authority decision-making goes as far as creating Maori wards, which only an ethnic group can vote in, is debatable, especially when the opportunity for every adult to vote in and stand as a candidate in a local body election is already guaranteed and has been available for some time. Prior investigation understanding. The question has to be asked how much investigatory work the council has done before deciding to make a decision on the creation of Maori wards. For example, has the council considered whether those wards would be iwi based or they would be based on a pan-Maori basis? Does the electorate understand how they would work? I doubt they do. The council has no current mandate from the electors to establish Maori wards, given that it did not appear to be an issue at the last election, although it does have the right under the Local Electoral Act. However, if the council is interested in going down that path, may I submit that the council put it to the test by resolving to hold a poll under section 19ZD of the Local Electoral Act 2001, rather than running the risk of first resolving to establish Maori wards and then having the decision tested by electors themselves demanding a poll under section 19ZB. Conclusion. There is no duty on the council to grant superior political rights amounting to guaranteed representation to those who claim to be Maori. Arguments that the treaty provides for separate representation are wrong. The council must ask itself whether, the defining of the local authority electorate as Maori and non-Maori in modern day New Zealand is a desirable practice. In my opinion, the establishment of Māori wards in the Gisborne district is a backward step in our constitutional and democratic journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions of Joe? Question, Shannon?
Thank you, and thank you, Joe. If I'm following your argument correctly, establishment of any ward structure whatsoever would be inconsistent with your logic. So would rural wards, for example, be discriminatory?
No, this is based upon the people who live there without reference to race, gender, or anything like, or religion. It's just, if you live in that ward, you can vote if you're an adult.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go, Uncle Bill.
Good presentation, Joe. I have a question. One that might trouble you personally. Do you not think having Maori at the decision-making table for this district is a good thing?
It is. There are here, and it just got to vote, it'll happen. I always voted for Maori candidates. 40 years I've been back in Gisborne. This idea that Maori only vote for Maori and Pākehā only vote for Pākehā is wrong.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Joe. Everyone, we're going to take a break, about 15 minutes, and we'll come back at 10:45, and then we will have Sean. Thank you.
much for that.
But what I will talk about does support my written submission in favour of Māori Wards in Te Tairāwhiti. Here with me today is my son, Te Urumingi Charles Kingi-Ria. He is 9 years old. Earlier, his auntie Aubrey, my cousin, spoke, and soon his Nani Harata, my auntie, will speak. And like them, he is a direct descendant of Rawiri Te Kitu o Te Rangi, a chief of Ngāti Oneone who signed Te Tiriti in 1840 with Aira. So from Rawiri to Te Urumingi, as my cousin said, 8 generations. Here is the 8th generation. That's a long time to be waiting for something that should have happened. But now you have an opportunity to change that. So I brought my son, our son, here to bear witness. Because as the signing of Te Tiriti was a historical moment, so is today. As Rawiri said, Aira back then, we are here today saying Aira. We are whakapapa in action. And one day our son will recall this moment and he will share this story with our whānau, which is why I want him to see all of your faces. I will tell him your names. I will show him what you say about this matter, so he will know who said what, who said yes. Hopefully, I don't have to show him who said no. But if that is the case, he will know. Son, here are the people who will decide. These are the people who decide what happens with the Captain Cook boats. He doesn't like Cook because he knows about Cook and what happened. He also knows about what some of you have said about Cook and the boats. And going by the previous operations committee meeting and everything involving this whole Endeavour replicas debacle, it's obvious that Māori representation is needed to get it right. So once again, son, here are the people who will decide for us, for me, for you. Son, here are the people who will decide whether me or you can sit at this table as tangata whenua, like how Rawiri wanted for us 8 generations ago. Remember these faces, my boy, these names, because this moment is something they will long be remembered for. We will make sure of that. But I sense fear in this room. Fear of what? Of sharing with him, a child who is being raised to know who he is. And essentially, that's what we want for this entire district, to develop in knowing who we truly are as a community. We don't want fear, F-E-A-R. We've had enough of that. We want fair, F-A-I-R, fair representation of what was agreed upon 8 generations ago. I note that the rural community is critical, so is the Māori community. You have the chance to make a difference in our history. 8 generations. Don't make it one more. Thank you.
Thank you, Sian. Any questions of Sian from the floor? All good. Thanks a lot for your submission. Thank you. Charlotte, you're next. Oh my goodness. Oh.
Kia ora tātou.
Thanks for letting us have a say today. Koe tēnei koro atu nei ko Charlotte Gibson taku ingoa. I'm Nani Harata. And yes, this is my mokopuna, one of many. I too won't speak to what I've written. You've had a chance to see what I wrote. I just got a few things. Hei tāpiritanga. I just want to say we totally support Māori Wards. We also ask that you consider having separate ward for Kaiti. And because that's Ngāti Oneone's lands. Why do we want that? Because we know what's happening there. You don't. And that's no thing on council, it's just you don't. We know what's happening in our area. We know our people intimately. We know what's really happening in the homes and lives of the people who live in Kaiti. During COVID, we did a lot of meat deliveries. I've never done anything so humbling in my life as to deliver kai to people's houses. So when we go to those houses, some of those houses had blacked out windows. Some of us might know what that means, but I know there's some who have no idea what that means. It means that not good stuff is happening behind those windows to families, to children, to whakapapa. I know that we went to houses, there was no power. I know we were going to some houses, there was no water. I went to some of those houses and there were no parents. I went to some of those houses, there were 16 rangatahi living there and haven't had a parent in that house for at least 3 months. I know the roads are shit. We all know that. They're doing it now. I thought I was going to be late because the roads were still being done. And the water. We know exactly what's happening in Kōpua Whakapata stream, thanks to our whānau behind us, who are working really hard at restoring the life back into those areas. They've worked hard in making titirangi look, and we're all proud of that. We all take pride in that. It's not just for Ngāti Oneone. People were saying, oh, why just Ngāti Oneone? It's actually not. Anything we're trying to do actually benefits the whole rohe. Hey, so we love it when we hear people from out of town saying, gee, it's a beautiful walk up there. And you go, yes. And I'm sure you can take the glory in that too. We all do. We share it. We share in taking the glory for that. Kōpua Whakapata stream. We're going to share in the glory of that when it's cleaned up properly. Hey, we didn't really, nobody wanted to own it the other day. Hey, but all of those things, we want to have pride. We take pride in our rohe. And it's actually got nothing to do with whether you're Māori, Pākehā, English, Chinese, Japanese, or just Australian, or even a South African. It's about we're on the ground. Today, I'm here. Look, and if you want one of these sweatshirts, please. Go to Shan, she makes them. It says home since Mairano. And we've been here since Mairano, since the beginning of time. We've been here. Tomorrow, for anyone who have come here, if you're manuhiri, you can choose to go tomorrow. Simple as that. We don't have a choice. This is our place. Look, the only thing we can do is go from one street to another street. But this is home. This is home for us. Kaiti is our home since Mairano. And as my t-shirt that Sean also made, home is not just a place, it's a feeling. It's a feeling our home is. So we totally support Māori Wards. And why Māori Wards? I listened to what Joe said, and I respect his opinion for Joe. And I hope this is not seen as, well, actually I'll say it, then you can make your opinion on it. I oppose Pākehā making comments on this submission, but I actually oppose Australians making decisions on. I oppose Chinese making. Why? Because this actually affects us. It affects Māori. So we should say, can we do this? If we can't do it, or we need a bit of a hand, that's where we might need your help. just to get something. Why would I say that? Because let's face it, the council was set up as a Pākehā institute. Hey, we're working hard to try and make it fair, blah, blah, blah. But at the moment, it is what it is. It's a Pākehā institute set up by Pākehā. We had Julie with us the other day. And so I'm not talking from a hole in my head. Jane, the report you had written says so. It was set up, a Pākehā institute was set up by Pākehā for Pākehā. So it's okay for the likes of the Joes of the world. This institute is here, but I'm talking about for us. So I oppose anyone else having a comment on this issue. This is a Māori, for Māori to say whether we can do this or not. And I don't think it's going to be about that we can't do it. It's probably the next step would be how we're going to do that. I mean, I heard the comment, and we know the same. How can you make a decision? Your hapū is having a fight with the ones across the road or across the river. Yeah, we have, because we've never had an opportunity to work together. Because for all intents and purposes, those ways of communicating with ourselves were stripped away because someone else made a decision for us. So we actually stopped talking to each other. Would it be easy? I don't think it would be easy, but I don't think it's impossible. But anyway, I'm coming back to Ngāti Honorunu. Ngāti Honorunu are putting our hand up to say, we can look after Kaiti, we can look after everyone from that bridge there, to the Pauawa stream. We'll look after the people, the constituents within our rohe. We will try hard. We might get it a bit wrong. I'm not saying we're the geniuses, but I think we have a damn good shot at it. Let's face it, councils have had a long-term shot at it. You're not doing too bad just lately. You did poor before that. I think same with education. Ministry have done badly. They're getting a bit better. Our education, we've got a kohanga at Pōhorāori, we've got a kura kaupapa Māori based at Pōhorāori, and our whare kura. We're working with the ministry to build all those places up. Why? Because we're not going to sit back and blame everyone else for the injustices of our kids. So it's okay. We will take responsibility for our kids, and we will ensure we'll teach them what we think they need to know. That's why Te Rumingi is here today, because he's going to be the voice for his generation when he comes. So we think for that, we'll do our best. The environment around Kaiti area, we've got a whole team of whānau who are awesome young people, and I figured I'll be dead in probably 20 years. They've still got another 40, 50 years to go, so we're good. We're good to go. We've got a plan for this to keep on going. And at some places, it is about leadership. And hapū, I suppose we're lucky because we made our voice heard. And that's really nothing to do with anything, but because we're based right here. Everyone else is just further out. So, I'll have a say for us because I can see. But that's all I just want to conclude with is to say that give us a shot because we are watching. We can do this. Iwi Māori can do the ward things, and I'm absolutely sure that for our hapū alone, and it's a pity we didn't have enough time because I would have gone to Ngai Tāwhiri and Te Whānau Aiwi, because we are the three hapū that are hugely impacted on council. So I suppose together we could have done a strategic plan together, but time wasn't our friend. But so we thought we'll present ours, and we still have that talk with them. So thank you all for listening to us this morning. And yes, Te Urumingi is watching. He's watching. Our tipuna, you heard the girls talk about our tipuna, Rāori Teke Tuatarangi. He was the first cousin to Te Kaniā Takiro. Te Kaniā Takiro was the paramount chief of Te Rāwhiti. Te Kaniā Takiro never signed the treaty. It's interesting where some people have said, well, he didn't agree with it. Nope, that's not the reason. The reason is Rawiri was his tuakana. And by that, in that time, they still adhered to those processes. So the tuakana, once the tuakana says,
this is the way we're going to go, then that's the way. So when he signed it, Aira, it could mean lots of things. But actually, we've taken on the thinking that Aira is a positive thing. It's like, bugger it, let's go for it. Hey, so for us, that's Aira. Let's do this, whānau. Let's go on, let's get it. And let's work toward, it's not if, it is and. It is and. So good luck, everyone. We'll see you Monday.
Thank you. Hey, thank you, Charlotte. Any questions of Charlotte from councillors to clarify? Bill?
Obviously, the leadership role rests easily with you. Tono I put on the table, why don't you have a go to get here?
That's real easy because I don't know what's happening anywhere else. I know, I think, because I did think of council, not that I thought I would get on. I did think, but I don't know intimately what the other areas are doing. I can speak for you on hours for kōpua whakapapa stream. I can talk to you about education, poverty, health, and kaiti, but I can't do the same in the other areas. What I can do is help the other areas to say, oh, you know, might want to look at this, that, and the other. And I'm all for just helping our people to try and make the decisions on what's good for them, what's best for them, and how best they want to progress themselves. For us, this is where we are at, just ngāti ono.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Welcome.
Next, I am going to invite Karen Piwhairangi. Okay, what we will do while we wait for Karen. Oh, there, they take the chair has arrived. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter. Next, I'm going to invite Adam and Marsha. Welcome to the table. And you will be speaking to Moira's written submission. Thank you. Welcome, Jodie. Please take a seat, make yourself at home. Thank you.
Me anō kia koe rehe, rangatiro tēnei kauni, tēnei te mihi atu kia koe hoki Nadine, tēnei te mihi atu kia koe te rangatira. Te mahi tēnei, mahi tapu tēnei, e pāna kia mātou te iwi Māori o tai rāwhiti. Mihi anō tēnei kia koe hemi, ara mai koe ki te korati kia mātou kei wai o hi harora, e pāna ki tēnei ko, tēnei te mihi atu kia koe hoki. Me anō tēnei kia koutou a mātou whanau, ngāti ono, ngā uri a Ruapani, tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou, ngā uri a Taitanga Mahapi, ngai tāmuri hoki, tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou I tēnei. Kia ora tata. Kia koe.
Yeah, just firstly, to acknowledge previous speakers, it takes a lot of time and effort to be able to participate in these types of forums, so acknowledgements to them. Basically, we're here today, and I won't go over the written submission that I'm assuming you've all got, to support the Māori Wards kaupapa in principle. Just a few points we want to reiterate in this regard. As we understand, and I've heard previous speakers say so, we're just tipping over the halfway mark now in terms of a Māori population. So equitable, our ability to have equitable say at the table is really important. And today we're speaking about their whakata in particular. The mechanisms that beyond the Māori Wards that we want to still push with the council are the Treaty of Waitangi and those three principles of participation, protection and partnership. And the LLB that is currently in our legislation and the relationship we as governance are meant to have together, that's something we're looking to start working on as soon as Te Aitanga Mahaki settles. And then thirdly, the statutory obligations we already have, the council aren't too flash at enacting anyway. So just to note specifically our hotspots and those stat acknowledgements is Titirangi at the moment and the foreshore, just in the stuff that's going on over there. So moving on to the notion of equity and enabling Māori and whānau voice to be heard at this table is really important. Rongo whakaata population of 5,000 to 8,000, 40% of which are based at home here in Tūranga. So our people's voice locally is really important. So in terms of the participation comment, just to pick up some of the points of other speakers, previous speakers, like Jill Crisp's kōrero about education programs, because really it's about enabling more Māori to vote. They're not currently in the electoral system. That's a challenge for iwi, for council, and for the government, actually, about enabling that whānau voice to come to the table. So quite clearly we've had some engagement with our whānau and it's been preliminary because of the rush timeframes. Although this conversation's been tipping out in the community for some time, Māori Wards, based on what other councils are doing, our whānau basically said we want a rongo whakaata ward. And I'll give you some context for that. You know, who's our council? I think it's you, Tony? No. Oh, you're the only one who came to the week. Yeah, you're the one who came to the week. Yeah, that's right. We've seen you the week. Anyway, we arranged for our whānau to talk to incumbents for the by-election, and we came to town and talked to a few of them, those who showed up, 4 of the 8 candidates. And our pakeke said to us, well, actually, what's the point of this week? Because we can't vote for this person. And the point is the point, right? It's about enabling our whānau to have a say. And so we've got to find alternative mechanisms to influence their voice. And it's about not just one councillor, but having conversations with councillors about issues of the day for them. It's about how they vote. It's about voting. And it's about encouraging the whānau to have a say. So what our people see at that time was a rongo whakaata, because that makes most sense to them. Having said that, our rohe extends from Te Wherowhero Lagoon, to inland to Tauranga, this is our tribal rohe, out to Pauawa. So the extent of that rohe is the extent of our interests and issues. So just noting, picking up Jill Crisp's other point, which is about the poll. It's going to come out with skewed results anyway. We know that. So some of that is also about the legislation and the notion that well, Māori Ward is fine, but you can have a non-Māori be elected to that role. So it doesn't quite make sense. And that's part of the inequities in the act at the moment. And also, I just think a good point is around how you operationalise some of the stuff. So it's always the notion that a fish rots from the head, right? And so the Māori Wards is a good step towards making a change. But whether it's the right change and whether it gets across the line is another issue. I'll just see if my mate's got any points to add to our kitty.
Yes, just one other thing to cover specific to our submission. We want to ensure that the GC recognises that Māori representation on the council is important to us, but not a replacement for iwi consultation. It is important that the GDC maintains those links to iwi, as we are the signatories to the treaty and the protectors of the lands that we have statutory obligations over. That's all I really have to offer.
Just as a former negotiator for rongo whakaata settlement, I'm just letting you fellas in on a bit of info. Your fellas' name came up quite a bit. This is during the early 2000 period. It came up with Pauko, with the dump that was left out on our land. Right, so we got major issues with that dump that's got your fellas' name on it. It came up with the Waikanai motor camp, taken for railway purposes. Now it's a motor camp, and other issues around the port, water, the list goes on. So, as I said, to combat that, we suggested to the Crown we wanted an LLB mechanism, and as part of the agreement we had with the Crown was the setting up of a local leadership body and a central leadership group. Because one of the issues I have is this: who keeps an eye on you fellas to make sure you're doing your job properly? So, what's the comeback for us if Tony's got no taringas and I can't get anything from Tony? Who do I go and see to fix Tony up and the rest of you up? So I'm talking about the Minister of Local Government and all that sort of thing. So it was really, really important that that's why we've taken a bit of time to get this sorted out, our relationship with you fellas. But as I said, we've got some major takes to talk about with you fellas. And as I said, with being an employer of these two here, we've constantly got forestry consents at our table. It's a huge problem here. Water's a major problem here. And yet we haven't determined who owns water, but yet you fellas allocating water left, right and centre around here. Didn't know you fellas own water, right? The dump, as I said, Pauko, that's a mess. And what was interesting that we found was actually you fellas were responsible for confiscating it in 1944 when we were away fighting in the war. So that's left a really bad taste in our mouths. So we're totally supportive of this kaupapa of Māori Wards, but as my sister and Adam have said, it needs to be specific to iwi. Because at the end of the day, when the Treaty of Waitangi was signed here on the 5th to the 12th of May 1840, 14 of the 24 signed from Rongo Whakaara. Our tikona that signed was Paratene Tura, who had mana whenua by the way of Kaiti Hill. And I told you first before about this, when we had that wānanga up there. That land went to Paratene Turangi's family. So when we talk about the 3 Ps, I'm hoping they're not the 3 Ps on your full sign at the Peki. Because that's how we feel. Sorry, as a negotiator, that's how we feel. You're talking about those 3 Ps out there, not participation, protection.
Got it. Thank you for that. Any questions of Jody, Marsha, Adam, Councillor Cranston?
Yeah, thanks for that. I heard that it would be ideal to have Rongo Whakaata ward, if you like, and even the wards need to be specific to iwi. We've got quite a few iwi in this area, and if you extend that down to hapū, that's where our problem lies. The number is so vast, and that how do we handle that?
Well, you know, with the iwi issue, we're very specific in that we know who signed the treaty on our behalf of Rongo Whakaata. So there were the 3 clans. We've only got 3 main clans. And I think it could be area specific. So after the signing of the treaty, a lot of our ancestors went through the native land court to have all the land divvied up around it, right? And it was hapū specific. So I suppose the advice I'm offering you is to hire a researcher from the Crown, because it's an issue that we have to go back and talk to Te Arawhiti about, as well as who's doing all this work in terms of providing you fellas advice, whether it's iwi or hapū wards. But as my sister said, we want a specific ward for us because we're treaty signatories. We gave you this land for the city. Actually, we didn't give it to you, you took it off us by force. So yeah, we're ensuring that our obligations to the treaty are being fulfilled.
And I do say, there's the Hareita Collective made up of the iwi forum at the moment. And most of you know them. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Paul wants to ask a question.
You heard the comment I put on the table for Charlotte about representation. Marsha, you talked about the iwi leadership group. Do you discuss jointly or conjointly representation in terms of seats at the table?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is the one, you know, because it's a comment that came up earlier. So you fellas here to represent everyone, eh? Well, no one's been talked to us other than this one. And you know, you're having the same tikanga applied to us, that we're there for Māori Wards, but we're there to represent. We've always been like that. Because what's good for us is good for the community. You get it right with mana whenua, then chances are you'll get it right for the rest of the community. But I don't see that happening in reverse with you fellas. Yeah, if we have a Māori ward for Rongo Whakaata, they'll represent everyone in the estate, whether they're brown, white, whatever.
It's an important aspect under the actual act. The persons elected through a Māori ward are there to represent all persons, comparative to iwi, where we reserve specifically iwi. So any kind of appointment like that should come from the community within.
I do think, if to be more specific, Bill, if this is what you're asking, I think the iwi chairs have these conversations. And the thing about the iwi collective, we pray friendly at that table. because it's about the greater good of everybody, eh?
Thanks a lot. Thank you for
Thank you.
So I am just going to do a quick check. So Toby, you are next. So you will have 5 minutes to, so your other submission will be later, the rate submission. So we're just going to first work through all our submissions in regards to Māori wards. After Toby, it is Tony Dobson. So, and then we're still waiting for Karen Pewhairangi, who, and Tui is now in person, not Zoom anymore. And then we will Zoom with Shimmy Franson. You've got that sorted. All good. So, Toby, welcome. Please join us at the table. Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to submit. It's down as me, but it's actually under Federated Farmers, but it's too difficult to put it in the online submission that way. You didn't have a name. So broadly speaking, from a Federated Farmers perspective, we support Māori Wards. Support Māori Wards, yeah. The only caveat we've got is we don't want to see our rural count, our rural representation diminished as a result, because we've got a balance of 12 councillors. It's, at the moment, it's making sure that we're still at the balance there, because for us, the rural economy is what drives our region. And at the moment, we've got 4 rural ward councillors, which is probably, we've got diminishing populations throughout, the East Coast, South and East or West. You can't go east from here. So that's the most important thing for us, is that we've got no problems at all with having Māori wards. We've got a high proportion of Maori people living here. But also we thought, well, at the moment, Pat Seema, who's not here today, I've never voted for her. She's my councillor, but we've never had the opportunity to vote for somebody else. She stood unopposed. Some of the arguments that have been put forward, for having them is that you can increase representation. Well, the question we'd ask is that not the opportunity already there for somebody from up the coast to represent, to stand against Pat in the area and still be representing, on the council, but nobody's taken up the opportunity to do that. Really, it's about as far as we want to say. We're really brief. From our perspective as Federated Farmers, that Māori wards wouldn't be a bad thing for our region.
Thank you for that, Toby. Any questions of Toby? Hey, thanks a lot. And we'll talk to you a little bit later. We're first going to finish this, and then I'll
thank you very much.
Later. Thank you for that. So next, I'm going to have Tony and then Tui. Thank you. Welcome, Tony. Welcome to the table. Make yourself at home.
I'll be very nervous, I think.
Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous.
I realise that this discussion is because of government legislation, but I consider this racist and wrong. I take my right to vote very seriously and have always studied the qualities and viewpoints of those who earn my vote and those who don't, and favour candidates regardless of gender, age or race. I think the vast majority of Gisborne voters do also. As Ming Foon said when he was first elected on council, there were only 43 people of Chinese descent on the roll, and yet he received the votes from other races. At the 2019 local body elections, Gisborne voters elected a lady mayor from South Africa, and 2 of the top polling candidates were of Maori descent, and the 6th highest is of Indian descent. I believe Gisborne district needs the very best, regardless of who their parents, grandparents or great-grandparents were, to face and overcome the challenges ahead for our district. We need the very best council. The proposal that only Maori on the Maori roll can stand or vote for those 5 wards is both divisive and discriminatory. I do not have any numbers for the Gisborne district area, but this morning found on the computer for New Zealand of 441,400 492 Maoris enrolled, of which 54.4% are on the Maori roll and 45.6% are on the general roll. Many Maoris wish not to vote on Maori electorates. This proposal will not only stop me from voting for quality Maori candidates standing in Māori wards, but also voters of Pacifica, Chinese, Indian, African, etc. descent, and also a very large number of Maoris who are on the general roll will prohibit them from voting for people they know and trust to be good on council. In the Gisborne district, there are many Maori people clever enough to be a councillor, but surely it is up to them to campaign well and convince people of all races, and as Ming Foon and others have. A previous person spoke of Martin Luther King. I recently saw a film clip of Martin Luther King where he looked forward to the day when a person was judged by the quality of their character rather than the colour of their skin. This proposal of separatism of voting is completely opposite to his wishes. A great number of people in our district, like me, have family members of other ethnicities, and I consider dividing the elected and electors racially is wrong. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next I'm going to call Tui.
Morena.
Welcome, make yourself at home. The floor is yours.
Morena. He mihi nui kia koutou, te kaunihira, ki ngā manu whenua I kōrero mai I mua ia au, tēnā koutou. Koutou ngā tangata o te taone nui o Tūranga, tēnā koutou. First of all, I want to just say that I've come from the blessing for the Rau Kumara program, which took place this morning at 5 a.m. I was the kaiwhakahaere of that, so I spent quite a bit of time in the last 2 days haggling with a gentleman from the council about my time to represent what I'm here to speak of. And so I just wanted to highlight that the Rau Kumara, Rau Tipu Rau Tangata, Rau Kumara the Ngāhere is our forest, which is the basis of a majority of our biodiversity in this region. That was there but is no longer present because it's actually collapsing. If you didn't know that, it's actually our water maker in this region. So all the farmers, and the towns and all the people that live there, the rain is created by the Rau Kumara ranges. So you may or may not be aware that Ngāti Porou and Whānau Apanui have formed a 4-year program where we've received $34 million to work on pest management and the restoration of the Rau Kumara. Now, we hosted Te Whānau Apanui, pretty much all the hapū, the chairs of that iwi. We also hosted DOC representatives from the North Island, and the incoming Minister of Conservation was there this morning. And I believe she's come back just behind me. Now, it was her first fixture as such, and I wanted to outline that because the presence of the council was missing at that fixture. And I did invite our mayor, and of course now I understand why she couldn't attend, but I think it very untoward and take great umbrage to your presence not being there. Anyway, so that's part of my introduction. I drove at speed to get here, okay, because being the main kai whakahaere, or the person who organised the whole event, which commenced yesterday with a pōhiri for the distinguished guests, I couldn't leave before they had left. So I actually kept everything on time and ushered them all out. I drove at speed through all the potholes, and my car, my beautiful car, which I just bought off my daughter, is almost wrecked. I'm going to have to sell it. Actually, I've just paid for it. I've just realised I can't keep it on that road. That road is terrible. Now, I'm saying these things because as I'm driving along, I'm thinking, this is why we need to have specific Māori representation on council, because our road, our ngahere, our people, how are they represented at this table? I'm not saying they're not, I'm just saying they're not represented adequately. Now you've seen I'm going to try not to read through it all because obviously it's very similar to Tina Ngata's, but I'll go through and read some of the things that I think I need to highlight. So I'll start with my identity. I'm here as an elected representative of Te Runanga Nui o Ngāti Porou. I'm in my 3rd term. There's only 5 of us who've made the full 3 terms, then we get kicked off. Now, I represent the rohe of what is called in the deed Te One Poto ki Rāhui Mānuka, which encompasses 8 hapū and 8 marae, one of them not standing. It also encompasses Ngā Pai Maunga, which are the 5 mountains. It also encompasses the Upper Waiapu, the Tapu Wairoa, and the Mangooporo rivers, Ruatoria Township, Tūparoa Beach, and Reporua Beach bays. Okay, so it's quite an extensive and significant area in Ngāti Porou. Not that that makes me significant, I'm just telling you my workload, really. So yeah, trying to fit this type of thing in to come in and do this and juggle the many jobs that I do across the iwi, the hapū, the marae, and so on and so forth. I just feel like I'm here in a tiz, and I just want to say that I didn't prepare for my oral submission because I didn't have the time. So I'm also the chair of 2 of the marae in that rohe, and it's not because I want to, it's a matter of having to make sure that they're maintained adequately for our people. And it's a thankless task, and it's weary. And I tell you, not having representation on council that is able to come and someone who can advocate for us. We have Bill here, but he's 1 of 13. He's not enough. I ran in the city. Why did I do that? To give another voice to our people, another vote at the council. Now that was ridiculous. I had so many people questioning why I was running in the city. I said, there's a strategic reason for that. It didn't work, but I'm just trying to tell you, in our everyday lives, there are many of us who actually are trying to do so many things, and probably none of them well, to ensure equity for our people, our Māori people. All people, really. Anyone who requires to have somebody else speak on their behalf until they can speak for themselves. And more importantly, I'm here as an individual of Aotearoa, you know, with my Dutch heritage as well, as a taxpayer and as a ratepayer. But my submission is as a descendant of Ngāti Porou, Ngāti Ue Pōhatu, Rongo Whakata, and Ngā Araki Kaipūtahi. I advocate for representation of Māori in the Tairāwhiti by way of the Māori Wards and Māori seats on the Gisborne District Council. And I just want to say that my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Paratene Te Muku Puorongo, who lived at Tokomaru Bay, signed the Treaty of Waitangi, which is quite significant because, as you will know, not many of people of the Ngāti Porou persuasion signed the treaty, but he was one of them. And he also was from Ngā Araki, Kaipūtahi and Rongo Whakata and Mahaki. So I guess in a way, my bloodlines are right across the Tairāwhiti. And I've never felt so strong about them, like listening to the different contingents, Ngāti One and Ngaita Manuhiri. I realise, you know, how important it is for everybody to be counted here for the prosperity of our region. And I'm sure some of you see that. It's just finding the way to make that happen. So this creation of Māori wards, I mean, there were greater thinkers than us, you know, in the 18th century, 19th century. And it's in here. I'm not going to quote it, but there's quotes that came from, you know, the parliamentary sessions where both Māori and Pākehā of the day, well, mainly Pākehā because there were very few Māori in Parliament, actually espoused the logic and reasoning and the goodwill of having Māori representation. And it's really just up to us to, I think, get over some of us have, you know, and I just heard the gentleman before and some of the things he said, again, I took great umbrage to, but I'm like, okay, he's entitled to what he thinks. But council has to think for everybody. And that is the challenge, and you know that, but you might just have to be reminded of that there are voices out there that are silent, screaming voices, ones that, you know, like Charlotte alluded to when she goes to the homes in Kaiti. I mean, I would be scared to do that, quite honestly, because I would be afraid of what I would see. And so I really tautoko what she said in terms of, we know our part of the community. Let us, you know, speak on behalf of that community. And I think it's really important. Not to say that Josh and Meredith and others don't, but I mean, she's coming from a different place. She's coming from a different place. So have you all read the submission? So I'm just going to whiz through because you've all read it and it's quite lengthy.
So everything was taken as read. Everyone have these submissions. So just what you want to maybe summarize or add on top of.
I'll just add a few extra things. I'm sorry I didn't prepare, but I'm just sort of off the cuff here. So on page, where are we? I think it's page 3, sentence number 14, where I talk about engagement over Māori ward representation. So, you know, we did in the end get a wee presentation that was given to, for the purposes of the Runanga board members, which we asked for, I believe. But the only opportunities to discuss this kaupapa directly with staff was when the Māori liaison staff were present in Ruatoria, Te Araro and Wharekahika. But the venue visits were not adequately promoted, did not include presentations, were not targeted for hapū. And 2 of these were dated for days before the submissions were due. And I also wanted to say that the one in Ruatoria was at 11 o'clock when many of us were working, so we couldn't attend. And as I said, for me, people like me, and there are many others, especially women like me, we have so many roles, we can't dedicate ourselves to driving 130 kilometres at speed, you know, which takes almost 2 hours because all the traffic has to slow down now, to be here on time to make a presentation, because obviously it's important to be here so I can face each one of you, look into your eyes, get a feeling of where we're going together and how much more work we have to do together, or are we going to be able to implement some of the things that I've listed in this submission. Down to long-term plan 19, engagement with hapū to meaningfully contribute to this document has not occurred as it should, and it is arguable that the lack of participation from the many iwi and hapū of Tairāwhiti is largely attributed to the lack of Māori representation in council, along with the limited capacity to get buy-in. And I've said that Māori are not interested in paradigms and systems that inherently do not represent their values, aspirations, and customs, our worldview. So obviously the structure itself is Western. So, you know, I mean, it's like staring us in the face, but the more we move and morph into something that is representative of us as a community, the more buy-in we'll get. A previous speaker spoke about, you know, like, oh, Māori can vote for who they want. But the thing is, Māori are not voting. Māori are not registered. Māori do not have, as you will know, my colleague from law school, Māori do not have faith in the system, and therefore they do not participate. So there's the lack of faith in what does not serve them. Someone like me is different because I understand the system, being a trained lawyer, so I will participate. I will turn up to a hearing and I will present and I will write a submission, even though I'll do it at the last minute, like at 4 o'clock, and plagiarise some of Tina Ngata's submission, as you'll see. So going down to ward arrangements, number 26. Depopulation and low Māori electoral enrolments have resulted in ward boundary revision and a gradual reduction in representation. So I'm just trying to remember the point that I wanted to make there. Yeah, we've gone from another thing about driving here. You know, really, you should have come to us. You should have given us, afforded us that. Bill, come to the marae, let us present. You know, us driving here, I'm actually going to tunnel for some petrol vouchers, because I think that we should be reimbursed for participating in a process that really should have taken place in our ward. At least give us that. The council. I'll just read the end. My recommendations to council are: number 1, instigate, affirm and uphold the establishment of Māori wards. 2, include in the LTP provision for Māori, hapū iwi, capacity building to ensure Māori ward appointees are enabled Māori communities as set out in section 81. To employ clause 31.3 of Schedule 7 of the LGA, which empowers you to appoint non-elected members to a committee. If the council believes that person has the skills, attributes or knowledge that will assist in the work of the committee, as a matter of urgency, for Māori wards are unlikely to be established immediately, and furthermore, Māori wards are subject to being overturned via public poll. Number 4, work with iwi hapū to nominate committee representatives according to a criteria developed by you as a matter of urgency. Number 5, ensure engagement on the fostering Māori participation in council decision-making includes targeted hapū engagement. Now, why hapū? Why hapū, hapū, hapū? When I introduce myself and my identity and, you know, the people within who are vote on the rūnanga, they vote for us to represent an area, and those areas are defined by geographic boundaries of hapū. And so hence the reason for the hapū emphasis, because just like anybody here, no one looks better after your home than you. Well, if you're a good caretaker. And one would hope that people would vote for people who are good caretakers of place and of people. Okay, we're not here to look good or to get paid, or we are here for our place and our people. And I just want it to be emphasised by myself and others that hapū are very important because of the geographic placing of hapū. And I'm nearly finished. Council as a long-term plan measure ought to benchmark themselves against other councils in progressing Māori representation in council decision-making. And it's time that we, Māori, hapū, iwi, whatever you want to call us, it's time that we spoke for ourselves more, you know, rather than have others speak to us. I mean, we're pretty much rock bottom. So it's time that this council acts accordingly to make Māori representation happen. You know, the only way is up, and part of that journey can be facilitated right here.
Thank you, Tui. Any
Kia ora
questions of
tātou.
Tui?
Yes, please do ask questions.
Well, I think you covered all your bases. Hey, thanks a lot.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you for
hearing me.
driving all the way, and safe travels back home.
Thank you.
So next, councillors, we are listening to Shimmy via Zoom. So there we go. Hello, Shimmy.
Good day, everybody. How are you? Thank you. Good, thank you.
All good. Hey, the floor is yours. Hi, Josh. The floor is yours. You've got about 5 minutes to share your thoughts with us, and then councillors might have some questions of you. So
Great.
all go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Fellow people who care about our community and the well-being of all of those who live in Te Tairāwhiti. My name is Shimmy Franson. By my name, you probably wonder where that's from. I'm Dutch. I come from the Netherlands, born in Rotterdam. And I'm a resident also of 11 to 50 Street in Whatatatu, near Te Karaka, which you'll be familiar with. Our family, my wife and family, have long whakapapa links to the area as well, being of Aitanga Mahiki and Ngāriki Kaupatahi descent. And I feel really, really blessed and privileged to be part of that community. I spend time at the marae, cooking, doing different things. So I'm very much ingrained in the community as well, but I also work in Auckland as well. So my life is takes me everywhere. I want to talk briefly about values and aspirations, about our region, about the idea that not so much having, I don't like the idea of the word Māori Wards. I prefer them to be like hapū wards. The word Māori Wards is very emotive and people sort of get their backs up about that. But hapū wards is about, you know, extended families, groups of people that that have a collective identity. The thing that I like about doing this is that we need to be first and foremost on the right side of history. We've got an opportunity in Te Tairāwhiti to extend and to promote the region as a place that is truly bicultural, that has a really, really strong Māori identity in all sorts of different ways of being. And one of the ways to do that is by having Māori and hapū involved in our democratic processes in a much, much better and more robust and fair way, an equitable way. And it hasn't been like that all throughout New Zealand. It hasn't been like that. Decisions in the past would have been made by handfuls of councillors to the benefit usually of fellow family members, people of their own community, have access to land and buildings, make decisions over the lives of others, alienate land. All sorts of different things have been done in the past by councils that haven't benefited people of this land. And so this is a way to not so much go backwards in history, but is a way to address at least the democratic participation that is important for people to have hope, for young people to have hope, that they can see people of their own community at a council, that they can be reported back. I've seen young people in Whatatatu totally focused and organized in a really powerful way around their marae. They are involved in lots of different things, but they're not involved in your level. And that's where they need to be. There's a whole lot of people who are really entrepreneurial, involved in business, but those people are not represented at a council level. So I don't want to go on too much, but it is also really about my fellow other people that are not Māori meeting Māori halfway. And the very least we can do is move aside a little bit and to create the idea of hapū wards or iwi wards. And I'm a little bit emotional about it as well, because I just see it as a huge opportunity not to be missed. And for folk around the table who I'm looking at the moment to be on the right side of history, what sort of legacy do we and you want to leave our communities? Rather than waiting for 10, 20 years from now for this to happen, do it now. You know, don't wait for people to feel involved and encouraged to be involved in the democratic processes. That's a fundamental beauty of our country, our democracy. And we can see overseas, especially where things have been squashed down and not going that well. But at a local level, this is really important. So, and the other thing I'd like to just mention is about the idea of capacity building, a provision within a council budget for capacity building around democratic participation, either through wānanga at a hapū level, so that it's not just chucking some people in and hoping that people vote for it, that communities are engaged in this process. And it might mean that some of you go out to some of these places and to help in that process, to maybe help run some workshops, so what it's like to be in a councillor, you know, and that gives you an opportunity to be at those places more, to get to know the people more. That's me. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Shimi. Councillors, any question? Not today. Hey, thank you so much for joining us via Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So, councillors, let me just stand up and take a good look at the room. Everyone has had their say. So this brings us to the end of our hearings for Māori Wards today, and deliberations will happen on Monday. So I call these hearings, I officially close these hearings. And just for those of you that might not be aware, when we were consulting on our proposed rate changes, unfortunately, Federated Farmers were not accommodated that day. So we have reached out, Toby reached out to us, and we said we'll give them the opportunity when we are all together just to talk to us. So Toby, please join us at the table, 10 minutes, and then we might ask some questions of you. And thank you for coming to talk to us a bit. And apologies again for not accommodating you the other time.
I've just sent him a text message.
Who's joining? Who?
Oh, Nigel Billings from...
We can take a look, Jesse, if you...
He'll come on. I can start anyway. He'll come on.
All good. Okay, Toby, the floor is yours.
Like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to come in and speak to our submission. It was a bit unfortunate. Somewhere got lost in the IT department, I don't know, but we're very grateful to you guys. So good morning, everybody. Well, I've already been introduced. I'm Toby Williams. I'm the president of Māori Wards Federated Farmers. Nigel Billings will be joining us via Zoom. He is one of our senior policy analysts. I think he's based up Tauranga ways. And yeah, he's just to support, here he is now. He's here to support more technical sides of our submission. I'm here as a farmer representative, obviously for our members in our region. So we'll start with the three waters. We've got some summary notes here of what we've talked about. The three waters proposal for everyone to contribute to the general rates. We don't support that as an organisation. We accept there's a problem with the urban water infrastructure in Gisborne. I think every council in New Zealand is facing the same issues. I mean, if you look at the council yesterday, I mean, papers yesterday, Wellington's looking at 30% rate rises in town to cover the same things. I think you'd be foolish to think there's a council in New Zealand that's not, you know, got the same issues. However, we think it's more equitable and fairer that it's a targeted rate to those users who it benefits mostly. As farmers, and this speaks for anybody who's not connected to those networks, we receive little benefit from it. If we're in town, you certainly, but through businesses and things we may use in town. But, for us, we see it more as a tax on us to help pay for, things in town. And I note in here, you guys in your proposal saying the low income people in town are unable to afford it. So we need to spread the burden across the entire rate paying base. But I think that also ignores the fact that many people in town won't own their own homes. The poorer people I shouldn't say definitely, are less likely to own homes. They pay rent or they're in some sort of form of social housing, whether it's government or council housing. So the very people you're trying to target with, saying that they cannot be afford it. And I know it gets tacked onto their rents and things like that, but that's sort of a separate issue that, that it ignores the fact that, the people who pay it are the people who own the houses. And also, I think it also ignores the fact that further up in our rural communities up the coast, it assumes that everybody who doesn't live in town is wealthy and can afford it. Where there are plenty of people who aren't connected, who are in septic systems up the coast or, inland or south of us that are also, poor, whether they may own their own homes or they're elderly or things like that. They're then, paying a decent percentage of their rates towards something which they receive no physical benefit from. We pay to maintain, install and upgrade our own facilities. If you guys come out to us, we've had this at home, we had to upgrade our septic systems. We did 4 of them on the farm, and it's about $100,000 worth of work over and above what we have to, then 10% of our rates. I mean, for our farm personally, we pay just under $60,000 in rates every year. So 10% of that is going, 6,000 is what we're putting in.
That's not, no, that's not what.
Isn't it?
The 10% we are talking about is not 10% on your rates. The 10% we are talking about is of the wastewater rate that is currently being charged to the city. 10% of that will be spread across the whole district, and 90% of that will be paid for by the city. So we're not slapping 10% onto your...
Okay, so I apologise then, because the clarification we hadn't got from the communication I got out of various sources. There wasn't my understanding, so that changes things a little bit. But
I hope you feel a little bit more relaxed now.
Yeah. Well, I'd say it's really important, because what we've been told, as I spoke, is it's 10% of our rates, and
No.
and it's well, maybe we need to ask some more questions of other people, but the way we read it, and it wasn't just me reading it that way, or maybe it was me manipulating them when I read it. That's what our understanding was. I mean, it's a bit different when you say 10% of the whole rates.
So 10%. So the stormwater, wastewater, and water, the charge that we charge across the region, 10% of that will be sheeted to everyone in our region, and 90% of that will be paid for by city dwellers. Correct?
Okay. Yeah, well, thank you very much for the clarification, because there's quite a big difference for what our understanding of it was.
So Toby, yesterday I spoke to a farmer at Matawai.
Yeah.
He pays $11,000 rates. He told me this charge would increase by $200 his rates.
Yeah, ours increases by about $1,800 across, in terms of, when you go use your online rates calculator, we've got, 3 or 4 properties all joined together, so you got to add them all together. But so that's that. Well, it finishes that side of the 3 waters for us, unless Nigel, you've got something to add.
No, good, Toby. I just wanted to note that in terms of 3 waters, that central government has budgeted, as council will be aware, a significant sum of money for particularly the wastewater systems, and we're right in amongst that and supportive of it. We would hope that would defray the need for a 10% subsidy from the general rate. But, our principle generally is if you're connected to the service, you pay the price. And but that's all good.
Thank you for that.
The second part of what we've got to talk about was the forestry roading rate. We support this. Being rural ourselves, and we're on, if you guys don't know, we're on State Highway 35 from Turihau or Tatapuri Bay right through to Christopher Road. So we've got logging trucks thundering past us from 2 in the morning till 9 or 10. Not that it makes much difference to, the logs have got to come in, it brings money into the region, things like that. But we believe that the quality of our roads has suffered, and it's through no fault, I think, of the councils. Well, it's when the roads were built 60, 70 years ago, they were built to have droving stock and then the odd stock truck, and then through the 80s, late 80s and early 90s, when the wall of wood was planted, there was very little thought of upgrading the roads to a standard that could handle the trucking that's there now. So it's fear that forestry have a bigger differential in terms of their ability to, to pay to maintain and look after our roads. We don't believe necessarily that will cover the costs. And it's not in here, but I made a point, I think, in a newspaper article saying that we should be looking at some of our really sensitive roads that every winter we know are being destroyed, the Tauwhiri Parae and the Mata especially, whether we look at, the council can look at, reducing the amount of logging that occurs over those winter months in those areas, to take the ease off the pressure on our roads. Because we all know that councils haven't got a lot of funds, and we're spending a lot of funding, fixing problems, where if we can eliminate some of the problem occurring, suddenly the more funding becomes available for other areas. I think, Nigel, you had something to talk about the forestry differentials?
Oh, just a shout out to Gisborne Council for leading the way on forestry differentials. It's something that we do look for in rating structures, and we've noticed that among the district councils that Gisborne was one of the earlier ones to take the bull by the horns and get a good and substantial differential up on the board. So good on you for that, and we certainly support pushing it up to 10. We have a real concern about the farm to forestry that's happening, certainly where it's driven predominantly by the ETS. And our understanding of rateable values is that forest land is not a great revenue generator for council. So you need a big differential, but we congratulate you for coming out of the blocks on that.
Thank you, Nigel.
And the final part for our submission was changing the forestry definition to the rating to capture properties with greater than 20 hectares of forest. Again, we support this proposal. For us, it captures us. We've got 100 hectares of plantation forestry on our property. However, in our opinion, forestry has a huge, the costs that our region suffers from, it's from the harvesting and from the logging side, the transport side of things is very high. And there's potential that into the future, we've got the wall of wood for the next 15, 20 years. But by the time we get to the end of that, the whole thing is just starting again. But the biggest issue we've got at the moment coming forward is that with the carbon farming now, we'll capture all these 20 hectares of forest and things, and we can rate on that. But with the carbon farming, there's nothing to stop people walking away after 50 years when the trees have stopped producing carbon. And then we've got a wasteland that our council, where us as ratepayers, have to pick the tab up for. So we thought maybe and this isn't in our proposal, this is only to come on later on, is that we look at rating structures for the forestry that reflect the value of the carbon that's coming off them, so our council can gain more funding from that. And if it stops people from planting, carbon farming in our region, more carbon farming in our region, then we support that as well. For us, we've got no issues with forestry. The forestries are great employers. The trees are there. We may as well harvest and use them. We do have big issues. I think you'll find out later on, maybe early next year, about the carbon farming side of things, which is a big concern. But certainly we support having, more forestry captured under that proposal from the council. Nigel, have you anything to add?
No, that's fine. Well said, Toby. We'll take the 20 hectares. as proposed as a subdivision of a farm rating unit. Thank you.
From my perspective, that's everything we had to talk to about. I really appreciate the clarification about the wastewater side of things, because, you know, I think it's caused quite a bit of angst, a lot of among members into that, and we can convey this back to our members.
Thank you for that.
If we're happy with it, we would welcome the extra revenue.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you'd struggle to.
Hey, any questions of Toby or Nigel? Councillor Aku, just make sure it's a question. We're still in a hearing.
Just seeking clarification in terms of the roading, talking and trying to shut operations down in the winter. Have you complained to council about the activities of these transport operators in the winter?
Yes. Now we have. We've got the app. Is it Fix It app? Yeah, we've got that. My wife is incredibly thorough at annoying the council staff, unfortunately. And talk about, and we actively encourage our members to be using that Fix It app, to be reporting these issues that are coming in. I can only speak to the road I live on, and Highway 35 is now out of your jurisdiction, so that's got nothing to do with you guys. I mean, that's, any of you guys who travel up and down Bill, you would up and down the coast, the highway's pretty shot. So I can only, you know, encourage our members to keep submitting. I mean, the whole thing's a squeaky wheel. You know, you keep squeaking, eventually things get repaired. But repairs are one thing, but when we're constantly going over the Mata Road or the Tōwhiri Pārai Road, and we're constantly fixing the same things, dropouts and things like that, it's weather related, but it's the potholes, it's the constant. And if you go back into those forestry roads, I don't know if any of you guys have driven on them, the forestry roads are actually incredibly well maintained. They've got exactly the same number of trucks pounding up and down them. But the thing is, when they built those roads, they built them for 50-ton trucks. And I said, this is no reflection on the council now today. This was roads were built 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Supplementary to that, Madam Chair. In terms of the carbon farming, has Federated Farmers identified pockets where the competition between both is still a bit unreal? Have you actually complained to government and council in terms of?
Yes, so earlier, or maybe a few months ago, earlier this year, I was invited to become part of this carbon farming group that's been set up with support from Trust Tairāwhiti. They've been, I'm sure they had a sort of REAP, no, it's not REAP, it's, there was a meeting the other day with, I can't remember the funding organisation, it's not Activate Tairāwhiti, where they've got some funding to look at a study about the effects. We had, I think you guys are aware of the PwC report that came out earlier in the year about carbon farming in our region, and how Kim Lowe thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and thought you guys should be grabbing hold of this and going, look, we can make millions. I mean, for me personally, you look at Tolaga Bay, look at Te Puia, look at Rotoria, Hicks Bay. When my family was farming up there, yeah, well, the Huirua had a school, you know, and there's nothing. They had banks, shops, supermarkets. They've got maybe a petrol station and a couple of, you know, convenience stores now. And that's what Gisborne will turn into if carbon farming is allowed unfettered into our region. So at the moment, yes, we're involved in a project which will bring a report to the council and be publicly released. When it'll be, I'm not sure what the timing on it. We're going through the due diligence on it now and setting the parameters around it to bring a report showing what it would look like for our region. So it's be funded, and I don't think it's got anything to do with, you know, council specifically. It's a council funding thing. I can't remember the name of the organisation, but your council sit on, I think Nadine or Rehi, you guys sit on TEEP, is it TEEP? Yeah. So we're part, and that's involved with, yeah, so Trust Tairāwhiti and those guys are involved in that as well. And we were invited in. I'm not sure why we weren't invited in early on in the piece, but suddenly they realised that maybe these guys would be cool to have in there. Yeah.
Okay, last question, Councillor Akwata Brown.
Thank you so much for being here today and taking the time to share your thoughts. Mine was just around the remit, the remission. Federated Farmers have that dialogue with their farming collective. We have this policy in play, that helps support those who, as you say, not everyone is wealthy.
Yeah.
The assumption of sorts, but is that?
Yeah, so Nigel, actually, I was talking this morning about that exact thing, that we are aware, and if we're finding members are struggling with rates, there is support through the council and also through central government.
Yeah.
So Nigel, really clued me up on that today, so it's something we're certainly aware of, yeah.
Good. Oh, that's good to know. Last question, Councillor Sheldrake.
Thank you. What's the size of your membership locally?
Our membership, we've got about 286 financial members at the moment. It's something that we're trying to expand and trying to grow. It's difficult. Obviously, more and more farms are, people retiring, selling the farms are going to forestry. But what we also found is that many of our members have got multiple farms. So whereas you might have had 4 different owners, certainly in my district, the guys have got 3 or 4 farms now, but they've only got 1 membership still. We could probably try and figure out the area that is encompassed by, if you're interested, of our members in the region. But I would have thought we've got a significant proportion of the district covered in terms of our members.
So would there be like 70, 80% probably of the region?
Yeah, I would have thought so. So we've got a big Māori farming presence in our region. I know Whangara Farms are certainly part of it. I mean, they're 25,000 hectares. And then guys like Mangatua and those guys seem to do their own thing more. They're willing to have dialogue and things with us. We've spoken to Gary and that, and there about various issues that we believe, we've got common ground on. So it's something we're working towards.
Hi, Toby. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Nigel, for zooming in.
Thank you very much. Awesome.
We will be consulting again closer to around March. We will be chatting again.
Perfect.
But thank you for this, and thank you for taking the time to submit on both the Māori Wards and this.
Yeah, well, thank you very much to you guys for allowing us to come and speak. It's a privilege to be here, so thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot.
No, cheers, guys.
That's lovely.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thanks, Nigel. Okay, councillors, so this is the end of today. I'm just trying to think if there's anything I wanted to share with you. Oh. Okay, so just everyone, I just want to do some formalities, please. So apologies, I was a bit loose this morning. Apologies, Pat and Kerry, and they will watch the submissions online. We had Councillor Wharehinga joining us via Zoom. So I move that Pat and Kerry, seconded by Shannon, all in favour. Okay, then I take you to page 3, which just talk about the resolutions in regards to the Federated Farmers, just moved by Councillor Akwata Brown, seconded by Councillor Sheldrake, all in favour, contrary carried. And then on page 27, in regards to Māori Wards, note the contents of this report, moved by Councillor Faulkner, seconded by Councillor Debbie, all in favour, contrary carried. Hi, thanks a lot for being here today. And on Monday, we have first thing, Māori Wards discussion, then an LTP workshop. And if we have enough time, we'll carry on with our MA workshop. If we run out of time on Wednesday between 12:30 and 3, we have got a placeholder to carry on with the MA. If not, but hey, thank you for your cooperation today. Thank you, Alice. And anything you need to add?
Just a couple of things from me. Can I just remind councillors to use the councillor request email because we're getting a lot of...
Microphone, please.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Josh. Just a reminder to councillors to use your councillor request email because we're getting a lot of traffic for general information requests or RFS type stuff going to staff. So if we can direct you back to the councillor request, I'll be letting the staff know to send your request that comes straight to them to that request. And I've got the Jane Luton report uploaded on tools in your docs on tab. So it was mentioned this morning, it was referenced to it's the history of local government on the East Coast, to a piece that she did for the Crown Forestry Rental Trust under tools.
Tony Dobson. Hey, thanks a lot. We'll see you later. Thank you. And can everyone please make sure the invitations that were sent in regards to the Manawa Nui functions next week, some were sent from Donna, I'm especially talking about you who doesn't reply to emails. Please RSVP and make sure, because people need to prepare lunches and make sure there's enough seating for everyone. So please do that. Thank you to the staff as well. Where's James? Thanks, Nadine. Please say thank you to James.